Honourable members, the Deputy Speaker.
Are there any constituency statements by honourable members? I call the member for...
McPherson.
Where's my run sheet? What have I got? McPherson.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise today to speak on this government's failures when it comes to healthcare. Australia is fortunate to have one of the strongest healthcare systems in the world, and that's a system that's been built and strengthened through the efforts of both sides of politics. But what good is a strong system if people in my community can't access the care when they need it? During the last election campaign, the Prime Minister promised more than 71 times that visits to your family doctor would be free. But the reality in my community tells a very different story. Across the southern Gold Coast, bulk billing rates have fallen by 12% under this government. And the reason for that is quite simple. It's increasingly not financially viable. GPs across my community are incredibly committed to providing the best possible care for their patients. But like any small business, they must also keep their doors open. The costs of medical supplies, subscriptions, software, rents, electricity, insurance, staff and taxes continue to rise. And as a local doctor told me, there's no billable item in the Medicare rebates for those expenses. And when the numbers simply don't add up, practices are forced to make difficult decisions just to stay viable. I recently saw a letter written by a Labor member of this House to a local GP practice, which read, "My constituents have shared their disappointment that your practice is currently not a fully bulk billing clinic. I encourage you to move towards a 100% bulk billing model, as it would better serve the community." Speaker, with respect, that is not health policy. An instructive letter does not reduce the cost of running a medical practice. Good policy does. Local doctors in my community have explained the realities that they face under the current system. Under the current bulk billing model, many describe the pressure to deliver what they call 6-minute medicine. This means shorter consultations, higher patient volumes, and in some cases, quick fixes, even when a patient's condition requires more time and careful investigation. Take something as simple as high blood pressure. A doctor could spend 2 minutes writing a prescription and move on to the next patient. But a thorough GP will take the time to investigate underlying causes, risk review factors, and ensure nothing serious is missed. The problem is that under the current system, the doctor who takes 15 minutes to properly investigate the issue may receive the same or even less than the one who rushes through it. As one local GP put it to me, the thorough doctor becomes the poor doctor, and that is the wrong incentive to build into our healthcare system. Our healthcare system should support careful, high-quality care, not rushed appointments and treating patients like numbers. If this government wants to truly restore bulk billing, it needs to stop writing letters and start delivering the policy settings that make quality general practice sustainable. Because, as we all know, when GP practices cannot survive, it is our communities who ultimately pay the price.
I call the member for Isaacs.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise today to acknowledge the selfless work of first responders in my electorate of Isaacs. Our community relies on Victoria Police, Ambulance Victoria, Fire Rescue Victoria and the volunteers of the Country Fire Authority and the Victoria State Emergency Service. I'd like to acknowledge their tireless work that protects lives and property through coordinated response, including firefighting, rescue operations, medical care, evacuation support, traffic management, protecting homes and local infrastructure. We've seen that work during the flash flooding along the Great Ocean Road earlier this year and the floods in Mildura and surrounding areas. We've seen it again during the recent heatwave and major bushfires across Victoria. Behind each of these events and many others are the people who leave home at short notice, not knowing what they will find when they arrive. It means long hours, clear judgment under pressure, and a strong sense of duty to the community. For many, it begins with a call that comes without warning while they're at work, with their families, or in the middle of the night. Often, they do not know whether they will be gone for an hour, most of the night, or days. They arrive when the rest of us are trying to leave or calling for help when we need it the most. They carry the weight of responsibility before they even step out. Most of the time, we only see the end results. Roads reopened, houses protected, and families moved to safety. What we don't see is the danger and devastation first responders walk into. Unimaginable bushfires, floodwaters carving through homes, roads and properties, and destructive winds tearing down trees, power lines and buildings. I extend my sincere thanks to all first responders in my electorate of Isaacs and across Australia. I've seen their professionalism and the readiness that sits behind every call-out. Your service, that's the service of all first responders, protects lives and property and is deeply valued by the communities that you serve. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
I call the member for Ryan.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Brisbane is being sold off and we are getting absolutely nothing for it. Labor and the LNP are using the Olympics to enrich their big developer mates. Here's 6 pieces of public land that are being given away to private developers. 1, the Brisbane Athletes Village at the RNA Showgrounds, sold off to corporate developer Lend-Lease. 2, the $2.3 billion Gabba Arena, funded by a giant asset sale of 9 hectares of public land. 3, the 7.1 hectare Visi site, sold or leased to private developers. 4, the 100 hectares of public land at Hamilton North Shore, sold off or leased to private developers. 5, the Gold Coast Athletes Village and Sunshine Coast Athletes Village will receive a share of $3.5 billion in public funding to subsidise private developers. And 6, the LNP Council are privatising the Brisbane River Stage. We're already seeing the Olympics driving up house prices. Locals are paying more rent than ever and getting outbid at auctions by property speculators, but Labor and the LNP say they can't do anything about it because banks, property developers and property speculators, and that's who the major parties really care about, are making more money than ever off everyday people. And talking of bad development, Brisbane Airport's draft 2026 master plan is very bad news for Brisbane. It forecasts a huge increase in flights, making noise and emissions impacts on residents even worse. It also includes longer-term plans for more overnight freight operations and flying taxis that will clog our skies. It forecasts a 70% increase in total aircraft movements by 2046, including more than doubling the number of international flights, which are usually on larger and noisier aircraft. This far outpaces predicted population growth. It will also double the number of flights during peak periods, exacerbating the very worst impacts of aircraft noise. There are no plans to address the larger noise impact created by the massive increase in aircraft movements. Brisbane Airport and Air Services Australia are already managing noise very poorly, as found by independent assessors. So the lack of any plan for this is absolutely appalling to see. The plan also includes plans for vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, also known as flying taxis. Who is asking for this? Certainly not the people of Brisbane, who do not want these vehicles further clogging our skies for the convenience of the ultra-wealthy. The Minister must reject the master plan and send Brisbane Airport back to the drawing board.
I call the member for Barton.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Bravo to Yananava Tavita of Elwood Girls Guides, who has been awarded the highly acclaimed Baden-Powell Award. Now, unfortunately, I could not attend Yananava's ceremony, and because of that, I wanted to celebrate her award here with you all in the Australian Parliament. The Baden-Powell Award recognises guides who have outstanding commitment to the Girl Guide promise and law, outdoor skills, service to others and leadership within their unit. And I'm told that Yananava has gone above and beyond in demonstrating these values, having been an active member of Elwood District Girl Guides since she was 6. She's a girl after my own heart, completing this award without fuss, all by herself, whilst lifting up her peers. Yarnava, your perseverance, your humility and your leadership is going to take you very far. A special shout out to her leader, Rosalie Nantu, who had supported Yarnava along the way. Now, congratulations to Hurstville Community Garden. Not only have this fantastic community group pulled off a very successful Clean Up Australia Day, they are also going to open their own permaculture garden. Green spaces are so important to metro communities like Barton. They give us a space to escape the daily grind, connect with nature, and more importantly, meet like-minded neighbours. But they only happen when community members take time out of their busy schedules to chip in. So I'm excited to cut the ribbon with this beautiful space open on this Saturday. I also will get to plant a beautiful native, one of many that will thrive in this beautiful space. Thank you to Charlotte Mullins, Gemma Palmer, Daniela Wheatley, and the whole Hurstville Community Gardens team for making this space come to life. Deputy Speaker, last year I attended the Raise Mentee graduation ceremony at Kingsgrove High School. Raise is not a non-for-profit organisation that runs youth mentoring in our local high schools. It partners keen local volunteers with students who need a little bit more support during their high school journey. In doing so, the program provides a trustworthy, empathetic mentor to each student. This creates a safe and welcoming space for the student to chat through the challenges they may be experiencing at school and their personal life, and a champion who will back them 100%. This sees the student grow in confidence and get through the difficult years of high school. I want to take this chance to thank Kingsgrove High School, congratulate its students, but most importantly, give a huge shout out to the local mentors like Andrea, who put their hand up to be a mentee. You are making such a difference to these young people's lives. Thank you.
I call the member for Lyne.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And while regional Australians and regional businesses are dealing with the problems of getting access to fuel, they're also dealing with the state of the road network. Regional Australia's face some of the worst roads in this country, and today I want to take this opportunity just to mention a small corridor at the southern end of my electorate that thousands and thousands of constituents of mine have to contend with every day, and I'm talking about Talia Road, Buckets Way and Medowie Road intersections with the Pacific Highway. This isn't the first time that I've stood in this chamber and raised this issue, and the reason I'm doing it is because for every day of delay in governments, both state and federal, addressing the problem at this intersection, we are a day closer to a very serious accident. Now, when I came into this place last year, and I took the opportunity, and I'm very grateful to the Minister for Infrastructure for her drop-in sessions, and I went to see her about a $12 million commitment to do design and planning work at the Buckets Way intersection, a commitment, I must say, that we as the Coalition also made at the last election. And she stood, in fact, with the member for Paterson at the intersection and made the commitment in my electorate, but I'm grateful for her too. And I said, well, what's happening? You know, this is an important commitment you made. I know nothing about it. Go and talk to the State Minister. I know nothing about it. She made the commitment, but didn't know anything about it. So I did. I wrote to the Minister, the State Minister for Roads, and 3 months after writing to the Minister, having written to her twice in addition to ask her for a response, I finally got a response. And it's a very interesting one, Deputy Speaker, because I asked specifically for what the time frame is. People are contending with a very, very dangerous intersections where they're crossing traffic 100 to 110 kilometres an hour. There's caravans, there's trucks, there's school buses trying to get across this intersection. And I asked for a timeline on this work. I didn't get one, Deputy Speaker. I didn't get a timeline. What I got is two things. Firstly, I actually got a lie from the Minister claiming that it was Labor governments that made a $7.2 million commitment to do some work at grade intersection at Italia Road, Medowie Road. That was in fact a coalition commitment. And secondly, as I've said, no time frame for a grade separated interchange at Medowie Road and Buckets Way. That is the only solution that will fix the problems my constituents are facing. Thank you.
I call the Honourable Minister for Small Business, International Development and Multicultural Affairs.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Today I want to recognise a remarkable member of the Cowan community, Helen Cox, and she has dedicated 2 decades of service to supporting residents through her work at the Hepburn Centre, where she serves as the Executive Officer. And over those 2 decades, Helen has played an extraordinary role in strengthening the centre, as well as the many community groups and individuals who rely on the centre. Now, Helen first joined the organisation as a part-time staff member, and through her dedication, her leadership and her genuine commitment to helping others, she quickly became an irreplaceable part of the Hepburn Centre. And today she's widely regarded as the glue that holds the centre together, someone who ensures that residents and community groups across Cowan feel welcomed, that they feel supported and that they feel connected to each other and to the services that are there for them. Community centres like the Hepburn Centre play an incredibly significant role in our suburbs. They are places where people come together to access services, to participate in activities, to build friendships, to support one another, and they help foster this really important sense of connection and belonging that really does hold together communities, and that is the very basis of what our nation can be when we come together in these ways. Now, I've attended several events at the Hepburn Centre, ranging from community gatherings to days dedicated to bringing together a range of services for those in need, including homeless people. And I'm really proud to have been able to support the centre over the years as the member for Cowan. Those who work alongside Helen often speak about her unwavering dedication and her willingness to step in wherever help is needed, and I can certainly vouch for that. She rarely says no to a request, and she consistently goes above and beyond to support the centre and, importantly, the community and the people who rely on that centre. 20 years of service, that is an extraordinary milestone, particularly in community work where compassion, patience and commitment are essential. Deputy Speaker, I dare say it takes a special kind of person, a person like Helen, to dedicate 20 years of their lives to this kind of service. Our community is stronger because of people like Helen, and it really is a privilege to be able to recognise her in this place here today.
I call the member for Forrest.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker, and I want to place on record the extraordinary courage and achievements of a Forrest resident and indeed the captain of the Australian Paralympic team for the 2026 Winter Olympics, Sean Pollard, who in 2014 was surfing on the southwest coast of WA and was attacked by a 3.5 metre great white shark. The attack cost him his left arm and his right hand, creating circumstances of unimaginable difficulty for a young man. Yet, in the face of this life-altering adversity, Sean demonstrated remarkable resilience. Most of us take for granted our ability to complete the simplest of daily tasks, but Sean had to relearn the basics of life, no doubt gaining a powerful sense of perspective along the way. Through what was no doubt a long and arduous rehabilitation, Sean turned to snowboarding, which is perhaps an unlikely pursuit for someone living in Bunbury, but one that he took to with astonishing speed and talent. Within a year of the attack, he began competing at the elite level, and just a year after that, he made his Australian debut in para snowboarding. In a social media piece with Qantas, Sean expressed a massive thank you to the community and the people of Bunbury who have rallied behind Sean. Having represented Australia at the Winter Olympics in Milano Cortina, we're looking forward to welcoming Sean back as a true hero of Bunbury. You've already made us immensely proud. Australians, though, Deputy Speaker, are feeling the full force of inflation running rampant in this country under the Albanese government. When they spend more, you pay more. And the best barometer of this is the humble Bunnings snag. So let's break it down. The gas bottle is costing more because production and transport energy prices are up some 38% in 4 years. The barbecue itself costs more as steel manufacturing and freight are absorbing higher power bills as well. The sausage meat costs more as farmers are having to pay extra for diesel, fertiliser, refrigeration and many other costs, whilst the same goes for the onions. The sauce is costing more because every ingredient must be grown, processed and bottled using energy that is unaffordable under Labor's net zero ideology. Even the price of bread, with its milling, baking and distribution costs rising through the roof, is forcing Australians to pay more. So every single part of the humble Aussie snag has been squeezed by rising costs fuelled by this government's spending habits and its net zero approach at any cost to energy. We hear plenty of smug commentary dressed up as economic analysis from the Treasurer, but Australians shouldn't judge the Australian economy by political spin. They should judge it by the humble Bunnings snag, and the verdict is clear. We are cooked.
I call the member for Banks.
Deputy Speaker, in October last year, I spoke in this House about the changes the government was making to the superannuation system to better serve the interests of working people, particularly low-income workers. It is why I was so pleased to see the Labor government's latest reforms to the superannuation system pass the Parliament this week as part of the Building a Stronger and Fairer Super System legislation. As a result of this government's ambitious agenda, the low-income superannuation tax offset will be raised from $310 to $810 and raises the eligibility threshold to $45,000 from the 1st of July next year. This timing is deliberate, aligning with the third round of the Labor government's cost of living tax cuts for every taxpayer, ensuring that low-income workers receive a fairer tax concession on their contributions. These workers will receive a boost of up to $810 to their superannuation account, depending on the size of their contribution, with an average increase of $410 for affected workers. Over the course of someone's career, this can add up to around $15,000 by the time they retire. Deputy Speaker, recent analysis by the Super Members Council showed that the proposed changes to the Listo would benefit more than 1.2 million Australians, including 9,321 hard-working constituents in my electorate of Banks. Indeed, Deputy Speaker, when looking at the estimated number of beneficiaries among electorates in New South Wales, Banks comes in at 6th. And when looking to the average additional super, Banks ranks 4th, with each of those nearly 9,500 constituents ending up an average of $438 better off. And when it comes to the total estimated benefit, low-income workers in Banks are $4.1 million better off. And on that metric, my electorate ranks 2nd in New South Wales, behind only my good friend, the member for Parramatta. This is a significant win for the people of Banks. Much has been made by those opposite about these changes, but the truth is, Deputy Speaker, that 14 times as many people will have improved their tax position under these changes compared to those that will be adversely affected. Deputy Speaker, this is what real reform looks like. It maintains favourable tax treatment of superannuation while making the system better and fairer by making a dignified retirement possible for hundreds of thousands of Australians, including 9,321 constituents in my electorate of Banks.
Call the member for Durack.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The current state of childcare in regional Western Australia is dire. Economic and social wellbeing of communities are under threat because of the lack of affordable, accessible care. My electorate of Durack is not immune from this. In Kununurra, dozens of families have been left without childcare for the past 3 months following the sudden closure of the town's only childcare centre in December. Couples running businesses, working full-time, without family support, are now taking extended unpaid leave to care for their children. This affects every industry in Kununurra. In Western Australia, Durack has been the hardest hit in attracting and retaining qualified childcare workers. The Australian Childcare Alliance WA told the West Australian newspaper on Monday that the Midwest, Port Hedland and Kununurra had the greatest staffing difficulties due to high attraction costs, housing shortages and rising rents. In the recent federal inquiry into child safety concerns in early learning, it was told nearly 700,000 people are living in areas with little or no access to childcare. Families around Australia are driving several hours to neighbouring towns for childcare, or they're simply turning down full-time work because care is simply not available. Now, these problems have been created by the Albanese Labor government's approach to childcare. Their view is that childcare should be universal. Not just universal, but one size fits all and all centre-based. This is simply not possible, especially in regional towns like in my electorate of Durack. Every family is unique. Cultures, work patterns, faith, traditions and support networks, well, they all vary. Some families rely on grandparents, others prefer in-home or family daycare. A system that is built around a universal method does not represent Australia or the diversity needed within the system. In contrast, the Coalition believes that parental choice should drive childcare policy. Government should be empowering families with real choices and options, not forcing them into an approach that suits Canberra bureaucrats. Currently, these choices are not available to these families. So, whether it's the current fuel shortage, whether it's the banning of live sheep export, the firearm law changes in Western Australia, changes in Western Australia impacting our fishing families, or a poorly designed childcare system, Labor governments time and time again are demonstrating they either don't understand regional Western Australia or simply they don't care about regional Western Australia. So this issue of childcare is just another example of regional Western Australians being treated with disrespect and disregard by the Albanese Labor government.
I call the member for Solomon.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. There's been a lot of rain in the Northern Territory. I want to give a shout out to everyone who's dealing with those conditions, those that have been impacted, but also those who are responding to help our fellow Territorians out in their time of need. And the member for Lingiari won't be here today because she's on the ground back in the Territory with her constituents. But there has been a lot of rain for a long time, but it didn't stop Territorians coming together to celebrate Territory women. On International Women's Day last weekend, in the pouring rain, we gathered out front of Charles Darwin University's Denali campus and we did a block of the CBD, and we all celebrated together how proud we are of women in the Territory and the important role, the vital role that they play in community, in families, in society, in the economy writ large. So I also went to some other events after that with the Tamil Society, and they celebrated their incredible women who not only are honouring their culture from where they came, but contributing so much professionally and with their families to our community. Then with the Sri Lankans, I did the same. Well done to Slaffa. And they also acknowledge their awesome women in that event, as did the Country Women's Association, a fantastic event. I want to shout out Junie Nictomatis, the outgoing president now, but Mary Pocock, and Chief Judge Elizabeth Morris. And thank God the Chief Judge is our backup administrator in the Northern Territory. We were raising money for Chul's top-end women's legal service. Well done to Sue Fu for her presentation and also the work that they do every day helping Territory women when they need it most. I want to congratulate Rachel Shanahan, who is the new president and did an awesome job bringing that event together. And of course, Lizzie Travascus from ABC, who was the MC and did a fantastic job. Now, Deputy Speaker, many Territory women approach me at these range of events, which also included a United Nations Association of Australia NT branch event, and well done to Kate Heelan and her team. but they approached me concerned about the closure of maternity services at Darwin Private Hospital and the strain on maternity services at Royal Darwin Hospital. And while I'm at it, I want to thank the hardworking staff at RDH. My wife Kate and I, we were blessed to have our 2 kids at Royal Darwin Hospital. I want to thank all the staff there, but they do deserve better than what they're getting at the moment. Now, our government is working closely and collaboratively with the Northern Territory government to strengthen maternity services and ensure that public maternity care services are provided for all women.
I call the member for Wentworth.
Deputy Speaker, I'm here to talk about AI and particularly how it's going to affect Wentworth but actually our country. AI is a huge opportunity, but it is going to be disruptive, and I do believe some of this disruption is going to be felt in my electorate because as many people who work in the knowledge economy, many people in my area work in the knowledge economy, and we know that that is going to be particularly affected by AI. At the same time, we have some of the greatest tech entrepreneurs, the greatest venture capital in the country as well. So I think it is going to be a time of great change, and it's up to us in this parliament and this country to seize the opportunities and manage the downsides risks. And I want to sort of raise the issue that I have in the parliament, which is we are not talking about AI. So far in question time, we've had 4 questions on AI this parliamentary term, 3 of those from the crossbench, 1 from Labor, none from the opposition. That is a challenge because this is going to transform this country. We need to be talking about it here. The government has released an AI strategy. I think that's great. It took them 3 years. That's too long. And that strategy, which I think is solid, it doesn't have KPIs, it doesn't have timelines. We need those because this is really going to matter. This is going to transform our economy. And so there are 5 things I think that I would like to see the government move much faster on right now, and this is both for my community but for the country. Firstly, we need to make sure the benefits are shared. That means we need to make sure that AI is helping us in healthcare, in education, in the areas where it can actually transform the lives of Australians in their daily life, really for the better. Those benefits need to be captured. But also we need to back Australian companies in this AI revolution. We need to make sure that Australia benefits too. And that means starting with government procurement. Government procurement should be procuring from innovative companies, should be leading on AI so that AI systems and AI companies build up their capabilities here in Australia and then sell to the world. We need to get capital unlocked for the companies that will benefit. The government has started to work on Your Future, Your Super and RG97, which really stop superannuation capital investing in innovation. It needs to go faster on this. That capital needs to be unlocked now to back innovation. The regulatory responses from the government, they have acknowledged there are slowness. It just has to move faster. I'll give you an example. I have a drone company in my electorate. They compete with helicopters because they do unmanned drones and helicopters are the alternative. They can't actually bid on things at the moment because it is so slow to get an answer from CASA, the regulator, in terms of whether or not they can fly or not. That is unacceptable. And finally, we need to bring in the skilled labour in AI who are really talented. We can grow our own talent, but bring it in as well when we need it. The visa processing on skilled labour are far too slow. These are some of the things that the government needs to do now to help us manage AI.
Call the member for Maribyrnong.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Over the past few weeks, I've had the absolute privilege of spending time with some grassroots organisations, local schools and sporting clubs that truly represent the best of my community. I want to start by acknowledging the phenomenal team at Wingate Avenue Community Centre. We know that right now households are under significant pressure and food insecurity remains a very real challenge for many families. But it is during these challenging times that our community's capacity for compassion truly shines. Recently, I had the opportunity of visiting Wingate to see their fantastic Farms to Families program in action. I got to spend time volunteering, handing out fresh, healthy food to local families who are doing it tough. To see the direct impact of getting fresh produce straight to the people who need it most is both humbling and deeply inspiring. Community-led organisations and support like this make a genuine, tangible difference in people's lives. And I want to say a big thank you to Food Bank Australia for their support. I want to place on record in this place my special thanks to Donna Scott and Angie Courtenay and the entire team of volunteers at Wingate. Thank you for inviting me down and thank you for the vital services, activities and events you provide. You are a lifeline to so many and we are so proud of the work that you do. Deputy Speaker, looking to the future of our community, I recently had the joy of visiting 2 outstanding local schools in my community. First, a huge shout out to the Year 10 students at Rosehill Secondary College. They kindly invited me to speak with them about how this very parliament works, my role as their federal MP, and the importance of Australian democracy and civics. Let me tell you, it's always inspiring to engage with young people who are so curious, so switched on and so eager to understand how they can participate in shaping our nation's future. Knowing that these students are our future leaders gives me immense optimism. I also had the pleasure of attending St Bernard's College High Achievers Assembly, a wonderful celebration of student excellence and hard work. Right across the board. I was deeply honoured to present my Community Leadership Award to an outstanding student, Matthew Skidmore. Congratulations, Matthew, for your outstanding service. Visiting our local school communities, meeting their terrific teachers and celebrating amazing students is undoubtedly one of the best parts of this gig. Finally, Deputy Speaker, what is a weekend in our community without local sport? A few weekends ago, I got to spend a beautiful sunny Saturday afternoon down at the Strathmore Sporting Club. I was warmly welcomed by the club's president, Ash Martin, along with some of the club's amazing volunteers, players and sponsors. The first 11 team was out in the field giving it all against the Plenty Valley, and it was a joy to watch the action live. During my visit, Ash and the team proudly showed me around and also talked about the frog box that they've got, that they got through a Stronger Communities grant. This is really making a difference for this local club, and it was wonderful to be able to get down there and see it in action. It is such an amazing opportunity to represent the wonderful community of Maribyrnong in this place. It is a great gig. Thank you.
I call the member for Herbert.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise today to speak about something that has been felt in homes, streets and community centres right across Townsville. Our local support organisations are doing everything they can, but the pressure on them is growing every single month. Townsville Community Hub is now giving out 4 to 5 tonnes of free food every month. That is food that keeps local families going when there's nothing left in the cupboard. Their emergency relief program is seeing around 240 people in crisis each month, and that number doesn't include the people they simply don't have room to see. Families tell them the same thing over and over again. Food costs are up, housing costs are up, and they are struggling. The hub isn't funded for housing, yet they are helping between 30 and 50 families and individuals every month with the basics of food, showers, laundry, somewhere to charge their phone, mental health support, and help covering temporary accommodation or rent. These are frontline workers stepping up because this government isn't, and someone has to. St Vincent de Paul is seeing the same shift. In Townsville, they have supported more than 16,000 companions in just 12 months. That's not a statistic, that's thousands of locals who need a helping hand. They have provided more than $931,000 in direct assistance, much of it going straight to rent, car expenses and electricity, and soon to be fuel. On top of that, furniture and voucher support has reached more than $535,000. There is a clear trend. More people are asking for help with the basics, with their food, with bills, and keeping their household functioning. And importantly, they're seeing more first-time help seekers. People with jobs, people who simply can't keep up with the rising rents, energy bills, groceries, the cost of fuel. People who once would be able to stand on their own 2 feet are now needing the support. And those who only needed help occasionally are coming back more often. Vinnies are also seeing the impact through their retail store, which is experiencing strong growth. When household budgets tighten, people look for value. These stories of families stretching their budget, trying to save everything they can, spreading the money further, and they also help fund this charity that supports those in doing it tough. These organisations show enormous heart and commitment, but the reality is the demand is rising and they are under enormous strain. The challenges facing Townsville are real. They deserve the full attention of this government.
I call the member for Whitlam.
I rise today to recognise Jared Borg, who in January this year was named Shellharbour City Council's Citizen of the Year. Jared received this award because he has transformed the landscape of refereeing in the Shellharbour region through his role as President of the South Coast Group 7 Referees Association. Group 7 covers the Southern Illawarra and South Coast regions of New South Wales, which includes many areas in my electorate of Whitlam. Jared attended Warilla High School, which is in the heart of the Whitlam electorate, and began refereeing when he was just 13 years old. His commitment to developing junior referees, securing major sponsorships and creating strong pathways has set a new benchmark for excellence. In today's world, it is notoriously hard to attract people to referee in any sport, yet under Jared's leadership, the number of referees in Group 7 has grown from 80 members in 2022 to 175 in 2025. Last year, he became the youngest life member in the Referees Association's 100-year history, and he also received the New South Wales Rugby League Referees Association's Dennis Braybrook Award for his outstanding contribution to refereeing and culture. I was delighted to meet Jared in January when he was named Citizen of the Year at the Shellharbour Community and Australia Day Awards. I congratulate and thank Jared for his contribution and the contribution he will continue to make to his community. I rise today to recognise Talia Bonanno, who was recently named Shellharbour City Council's 2026 Citizen of the Year. Young Citizen of the Year. Talia received this award because she exemplifies passion and community spirit through her tireless volunteering and leadership. This is not the first time Talia has been recognised for her qualities and skills. She was named 2025 Young Rural Ambassador for the Albion Park Show, and in that role she has supported local shows across Albion Park, Kiama, Robertson and Dapto. Recently, it was announced that Talia has been selected as the 2026 Young Rural Ambassador for the Robertson Show. I've met Talia on a number of occasions and she is a remarkable young woman. She plays a key role as Vice President of the Ag Group, known as TAG, inspiring youth involvement in agriculture and local organising committees. Talia runs school agricultural programs and has earned multiple awards for poultry showing. She volunteers for Illawarra Convoy, a major fundraising event in our region. Talia not only competes at elite levels in karate, she mentors young athletes in that martial art. Talia is described by her peers as caring and committed, and a young woman who embodies the values of active citizenship. I congratulate Talia for achieving so much at such a young age and for being a wonderful role model for everyone in the community. Thank you.
I call the member for Bowman.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The timing couldn't have been any better. Just a couple of days after being appointed as our new Shadow Assistant Minister for Mental Health, I had the opportunity to attend the Mental Health Sector Parliamentary Expo here at Parliament House. This event brought together more than 50 organisations like Beyond Blue, Headspace, Lifeline Australia, Lived Experience Australia and the Royal Australian and New Zealand College of Psychiatrists. These organisations do incredible work every day to support Australians experiencing mental health challenges. Events like this are incredibly valuable because they provide parliamentarians like us with a chance to hear directly from people on the front line of mental health care. It means we can hear from those who are delivering services, advocating for patients and supporting families through some of the most difficult moments of their lives. Through the Expo, I met a wide range of organisations who shared information about the services they provide and how they are helping communities across Australia, including communities like mine in the Redlands. From early intervention programs for young people to crisis support services, suicide prevention initiatives and programs focused on improving long-term recovery outcomes, it was clear just how much dedicated work is happening across the sector and in all corners of the country. Many of these organisations also spoke about the challenges they continue to face. A consistent theme was the growing demand for mental health support services and the pressure this places on providers. Many highlighted the need for stronger workforce capacity. Others spoke about the importance of early intervention and ensuring that young Australians can access support before challenges escalate into more serious mental health conditions. Schools, community programs and youth-focused services all have a critical role to play in that space. The Expo provided a valuable opportunity to learn more about these organisations, and it also provided important feedback about where the federal government can strengthen support to ensure that no Australians fall through the cracks when it comes to mental health support. I want to thank Carolyn Nikolowski, the CEO of Mental Health Australia, and all of the organisations who took the time to travel to Canberra and provide an opportunity for parliamentarians to learn from their insights on the front line. Their work is incredibly vital, and their advocacy helps ensures that mental health remains a topic of discussion within this building. And it needs to be a national priority. It should be a national priority. The Productivity Commission estimates that the economic cost of poor mental health in this country is $220 billion per annum. Can you imagine the impact that we can have by just improving, just making incremental improvements to the mental health and well-being of Australians? It's not just a health challenge, it's a huge economic challenge for this nation, and the more focus that parliamentarians have on it, the better this country will be. Thank you.
I call the member for Spence.
Thank you, Acting Deputy Speaker. In 9 days, just 9 days, South Australians will have their time to decide who will govern the state for another 4 years. We have been blessed over the last 4 years to have Premier Peter Malinauskas, more affectionately known as Mally, lead our state and reinvigorate our state's economy. Just in the last 4 years, we've brought back the V8 supercars, Live Golf, just secured MotoGP, and we've had the Gather Round, the premier weekend package for those that love Aussie rules. It has reinvigorated our economy to the point where people want to invest in our state, and they are lining up to do so. It is a fantastic opportunity for people looking to make South Australia their home. So it is with great pleasure that I will now go through the list of fantastic candidates that we have in and around my electorate. But firstly, I do want to congratulate the outgoing member for Elizabeth, Lee Odenwalder, on his 16 years in State Parliament. He's made a fine contribution to his local electorate and community, and I wish him all the best for the future. Another retiring member is Tony Piccolo, who has been the member for Light and will be contesting the seat of Nadgerry. He has been a fantastic stalwart in the Gawler area for decades, and I am sure he will do a fantastic job in the Nadgerry seat moving forward. My predecessor, Nick Champion, will be recontesting the seat of Taylor, and he has been leading the way in the planning and housing portfolio for the last 4 years, delivering on significant housing growth, not just in my electorate but across the state, and helping to take the pressure off our housing crisis. To Zoe Bettison, the member for Ramsay, the Minister for Multicultural Affairs and Tourism, she will be recontesting and doing a fantastic job there around Salisbury. Rhiannon Pearce, the member for King, up around Golden Grove, has been doing a stellar job over the last 4 years, but also will be is also a first-term minister. So congratulations to Rhiannon. To John Fullbrook, my long-term friend, all the best, mate, in the seat of Playford. You've put your community first. You've worked really hard over the last 4 years. You've had your fair share of challenges. All the best in Saturday week. To James Agnes, to James Roth, to Alice Shaw, to Matt Marozzi, all good friends running in your seats as new candidates. Go well. I know you've put in the hard yards. Yeah. You definitely deserve the vote. Best of luck on Saturday week.
I call the member for Barker.
Mr Deputy Speaker, across my electorate of Barker, communities are confronting the consequences of a fuel crisis that this government has failed to manage. In town after town across regional South Australia, the simple act of filling up a tank has become a lottery. Communities that rely on fuel to function are now being told there's none left. In the Mallee town of Karoonda, the browsers ran dry 5 days ago. The town's only service station has run out of both petrol and diesel and can't say to its community when the delivery will arrive. Residents are being forced to very long travel to simply fill up their vehicles. Now, in Springton, in our nation's iconic Barossa, locals are reporting similar problems. Pumps have run dry and the community is being told supplies are uncertain. Across Barker, many service stations have multiple bowsers closed because particular types of fuel have run out. This is not an inconvenience. In Barker, across regional Australia, it's a threat to daily life. Let me give you an example of that. In Karoonda, the school bus, I'm advised by the school, will run out of fuel today. Without fuel, children cannot go to school. Without fuel, emergency services can't operate. I can only hope and pray that the good volunteers of the ambulance service and the CFS had the wherewithal to fill up those vehicles before we ran out of fuel. Diesel powers tractors. It sows our crops. It harvests our crops. It powers the machinery that keeps Australian agriculture moving. Without diesel, farms grind to a halt. Let me read directly from a constituent in Loxton. Her name's Nicole. She wrote to my office this. OTR Loxton had no fuel left last Friday afternoon. Our farm ordered 10,000 litres 2 weeks ago for spraying after the recent rain and to begin seeding. Only 1,500 litres arrived. That's been rationed and will be gone by lunchtime today. We were told by the supplier they can't get the supply into country areas because it's being held back in the city where there are more votes. And here it is, Mr Deputy Speaker. We've got an election in South Australia in 10 days, and it's no surprise to me that fuel is being directed to the cities and not the regions. And that's the reality on the ground in regional Australia. While regional communities are running out of fuel, Australians are also being slugged with skyrocketing prices. In recent days, petrol prices have surged by as much as 40 cents a litre in regional South Australia, pushing prices beyond $2 a litre, and it's still climbing. This is adding to the cost of food. High diesel prices increases the cost of planting crops, harvesting crops, transporting goods. Those costs don't go away. They get passed down the supply chain, and guess where they land, Mr Deputy Speaker? They land in the shopping trolleys of Australian consumers. As they're walking down the aisles, they can be reminded, and with every item they purchase, this government has failed them.
I call the member for Moreton.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, recently I took an unusual walk with my local councillor, Steve Griffiths, in my South Side electorate of Moreton. And Deputy Speaker, we walked underneath Toohey Road in Salisbury from one side of the forest to the other. And Toohey Forest is a beautiful part of Brisbane if you've never had the privilege of being there before. It's 10 minutes away from Brisbane CBD. It covers about 260 hectares and it's home to over 400 species of native wildlife. Birds, amphibians, reptiles, fish, mammals including koalas, wallabies, squirrels, gliders and echidnas. And those animals just got a shortcut underneath Toohey Road. It's because the Albanese Labor government has funded $3 million for a new under-road crossing that improves access to food and resources for wildlife by providing safe movement between habitat areas within Toohey Forest. And I want to thank Minister Plebisek and Minister Watt for their great work in making it a reality. Deputy Speaker, this morning we heard an incredibly powerful speech from Minister Ali on the International Day of the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. And Deputy Speaker, I thought that this was an appropriate time to spotlight one of my local communities, the Currabee Moss community. It's led by Imam Gamal Fouda, and it's the centre of the Muslim community in the southern suburbs of Brisbane. It's an incredibly multicultural mosque and has up to 40 different ethnicities with many different life experiences and backgrounds. And they're incredibly community-minded, whether it's clean-up days, whether it's community in days, inviting everyone into the mosque. What's clear is that the Currabee Mosque is some of the best of what Australia has to offer. And it's important at this time to remember that regardless of what your skin colour is, that regardless of what your faith is, as Australians, we need to stand up to make sure that no one is treated differently. Deputy Speaker, almost 1 in 5 Australians have Asian ancestry. I'm one of them. And only 1 in 18 lawyers is an Australian of Asian heritage. Asian Australians are strongly represented at junior levels, but that diversity is absent at the senior roles such as the bar, partnerships
and in the judiciary. In fact, there are more judges named Michael than there are Australian Asian judges. And Deputy Speaker, the current rate means that will take a long time before we see that change. These are the findings of the Asian Australian Lawyers Association's report into cultural diversity. And I will leave you with the words of some of their key members. Her Honour Judge Sharon Burchell says diversity does not soften the law, it sharpens its sight. And Jerome Martin, who says diversity in leadership matters because it broadens the lens through which decisions are made.
I call the member for Grey.
Speaker, we have a state election pre-poll starting this coming Saturday. I'd like to discuss the incredible candidates running in the state seats around Grey. Sam Telfer, current member for Flinders. He's a local fireman across both the issues and the enormous opportunities on the West Coast. And under an elected Liberal government, they'll commit $5 million to the start of a Doppler radar service on the Lower Eyre Peninsula. Sunny Singh, incredible candidate for Giles. He and his wife came here with nothing in their pockets. And now they run a successful business in Port Augusta. He's a councillor and he'll be a fantastic representative for Giles. My good friend Leon Stevens, he is a community man, a business owner, and is whip smart. He'll be a great advocate for Port Pirie and, of course, the Outback. Giles now represents 66% of South Australia. My good friend Tanya Stock in the Yorke Peninsula, where I live. She is such a hard-working, sensible and good person, and we've seen that already as a councillor on the Yorke Peninsula for some time now. She'll be a great representative for the Yorke Peninsula and parts of the Mid-North. And finally, Penny Pratt, the hardest-working politician in Australia. Now, the member for Frome, as it moves into Nadgerry, we must support Penny Pratt. I certainly will be this coming Saturday in Clare. Speaker, as I said in this place last week, recent torrential rain brought devastating flooding to rural and regional South Australia, and remote communities are now suffering the consequences. I've been in contact with affected councils, and they have been crying out for help. Take Mount Remarkable Council. Approximately 51 kilometres of roads have been damaged across 20 different roads. They estimate cost repair bill of $2.3 million. Flinders Rangers Council said this flooding is the largest event since 2007. Much of their road network is still inaccessible for the council even to assess the damage. The estimated repair cost of $7 to $10 million. These communities have been pleading for support, for financial assistance to get their roads back to standard. And finally, Speaker, I'm pleased to say some good news as of this morning. Following my meetings with Emily Burke, Catherine King and Christy McBain, as well as strong engagement from the impacted councils, the South Australian and Commonwealth governments have activated disaster recovery funding arrangements for recent flooding events. That is for the AP Wildlands and the local government areas of Barmera, Berry, Ceduna, Cleve, Cooper Pedy, Flinders Ranges, Oru Carrollton, Peterborough and Port Augusta, although it was disappointing to see Mount Remarkable Council not included in that area, and I'll do my best to have that included. Thank you to everyone who reached out with their stories, photos, their images of road damages. It all helped build the case. We still have challenges ahead, including liquidity of some of these small councils, but this is a good start, and I'll keep fighting for the small regional councils.
Call the member for Bendigo.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I recently had the pleasure of being part of a special book launch at the Bendigo Library. Imagine a Place, a story about going to playgroup book was launched at the Bendigo Library during a very special rhyme time. Imagine a Place tells a story about the kinds of things children, their parents and carers enjoy about going to playgroup. This book was created out of a partnership between Communities of Children and Kids Own Publishing. Communities of Children is based at Anglicare, Victoria, and is funded through the Federal Department of Social Services. Communities of Children commissioned artists from Kids Own Publishing to partner with 3 local organisations and playgroups, including the Bendigo Aboriginal and Torres Strait Bendigo's Aboriginal Cooperative.
A division has been called in the House. The proceedings are suspended to enable the honourable members to attend the division. The proceedings will resume when the chair of the Federation Chamber is resumed at the conclusion of the division or subsequent divisions.
grant of $17,500 went towards electrifying various aspects of the garden to help improve energy to the site and move away from their dependency on fossil fuels. The Longalea Neighbourhood Centre has installed solar panels on the roof and a storage battery, which will enable the kitchen to run and for power to the site for their sheds and pumps. Garden facilitator Jonathan Ridnell said that we now have a solar system which is pretty much a power station to the site. They are pumping water to the garden, which enables them to grow the produce, which is then part of the pantry that the neighbourhood centre has. The garden is incredibly important to the community, as what it is produced is then picked, bottled and goes to the neighbourhood centre to boost supplies for their pantry. Funding also went towards upgrading garden tools to more lighter and user-friendly electric garden tools. All of the projects that were funded in the recent round of Stronger Communities are being delivered, and I want to congratulate communities like the Longalea Neighbourhood Centre for what they've achieved with the funding that they've received from us through the Stronger Communities program.
In accordance with the Standing Order 193, the time for members' constituency statements has concluded. I call the clerk.
Government business statements. Further statements on International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination.
I call the member for Chisholm.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. Harmony Week is a time when we recognise the many cultures, languages and traditions that make Australia the best place to live in the world. Importantly, it is also a moment to reflect on the values of inclusion, respect and belonging that allow people from different backgrounds to feel part of the same national story, because they are. Harmony Week reminds us that diversity is one of the defining strengths of modern Australia. We should be very proud of the country that we are because of our diversity. But Harmony Week must be more than just celebration. It should serve as a reminder to us all that harmony must be more than symbolic. It requires effort, commitment and responsibility every single day and every single week. It requires us to actively build a society where every person feels valued because they are valued, and where every community feels that they belong because they do belong. Where one is kind to their neighbour as a fellow Australian and no one is defined by the colour of their skin or their heritage. My electorate of Chisholm is one of the most diverse communities in the country, and I'm very proud to represent my electorate here in this place. Chisholm is a thriving example of multicultural Australia. People from many cultures, languages and faiths live and work together in our community, making enormous contributions. The diversity enriches our neighbourhoods, our workplaces and our schools, our sporting clubs, our other community groups, our neighbourhood houses. The diversity in my community strengthens connections between people, and it makes our community stronger. And of course, we're all privileged to share this country too with the world's oldest continuing culture. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have cared for this land and built communities for more than 60,000 years. Their cultures, knowledge and traditions form the foundation of the Australian story. Our national story continues to grow through the many cultures and histories that contribute to modern Australia. I am so privileged to represent a community where people proudly share their cultures with their neighbours and contribute each and every day to the evolving story of our nation. I wouldn't be here in this place, Deputy Speaker, if it wasn't for multiculturalism and the embrace of communities in Melbourne for Italians who migrated here after the Second World War. Like so many people in my community, my family story is connected to migration, with my Italian family being among the more than 7.5 million people who've migrated to Australia since the end of the Second World War. My father's family came to Australia in the 19th century to find fortune on the goldfields, And all these stories reflect the experiences of millions of Australians whose families came here seeking opportunity, safety and a better life. Our identities often reflect more than one cultural heritage too. And those identities all shape who we are and how we understand the world today. My Italian heritage and my father's 5 generations of Australian identity are both part of the person that I am today. And we are fortunate in Australia to be a country where multiculturalism is embraced and where people are able and encouraged to celebrate the cultures that shape them. When people come to Australia, culture is something that people contribute. It's not something they erase when they make that journey to become Australian citizens and contribute to our communities. And Harmony Week does highlight the enormous contributions made by migrant communities across Australia, reminding us that diversity has strengthened our nation in almost every single way, economically, culturally and socially. And this celebration is really important. But it's also essential that we continue the work of building a truly inclusive society. And again, we don't do this just on Harmony Week. We do this every single week and every single day. We need to take these moments as a call to action for us to recommit ourselves to the work that we all need to do in our communities to make sure that diversity is valued, it is cherished, and that we see our neighbours as fellow Australians. We've seen some truly awful events over the summer in Australia, unfortunately, Deputy Speaker, where people have been attacked for who they are, the religions that they practice, and the places that they come from. We must all, both in and outside this place, commit ourselves every day to building a society where every person is respected, where everyone has equal opportunity. Harmony Week does, of course, and as the Minister made very clear in her statement this morning, coincide with the United Nations International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. And it is important that we recognise the origin of the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination and indeed the origin for what has become Harmony Day and Harmony Week. The International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination carries deep historical significance, reminding us that racism is not abstract, it's not harmless, it's not just words, although words do matter. The day was established following a tragic event that shocked the world. On the 21st of March in 1960, thousands of people gathered in Sharpeville, South Africa, to peacefully protest the apartheid government's passed laws. These laws forced black South Africans to carry documents restricting their movement within their own country, and the protest was organised as an act of non-violent resistance. Participants deliberately presented themselves without passports to challenge the discriminatory system. Instead of responding peacefully, police opened fire on the crowd, with 69 people being killed and more than 180 people injured, and many of those shot were fleeing the scene. This massacre, the Sharpeville massacre, became one of the most defining moments in the global struggle against apartheid, and the international reaction was appropriately profound and immediate, with the United Nations declaring the 21st of March the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination in 1966. The declaration called on the international community to redouble its efforts to combat racism, prejudice and discrimination, and we must continue that work. As was mentioned again by the Minister this morning in her comments to the House, it's also important to remember that the concept of Harmony Day was introduced by the Howard government in 1999 that reframed the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination in a way that softened the original meaning of the day and shifted towards a general celebration. I mean, of course we should celebrate diversity and the different cultural heritages that make Australia such a wonderful country, but we should also confront division too at this time. Now, real harmony is something that must be built and defended through real action. Real social cohesion takes work and commitment, and it means that we must first eliminate racial discrimination. This means a fair go for everyone, and that is what it really means to be Australian, and committing to the values of opportunity for all and the hope and protection that Australia offers is our best defence against division and racial discrimination. Of course, Australia's success as a multicultural nation did not happen by accident. It was due to clear policy direction from the Whitlam government, driven by the fact that the White Australia policy was not appropriate for modern Australia. And we do need to acknowledge the existence of the White Australia policy to acknowledge and counter racial discrimination in this country and to see that legacy. That was something that was counter to true multiculturalism and diversity. Generations of Australians from all over the world built a country that has become confident enough to welcome people from every corner of the world. Again, that wasn't always the case, and we should all be proud that it is now. We must acknowledge the work that migrant communities have done over many years, working hard to build lives, uprooted from what they've known, building successful businesses, enriching our communities, contributing in every single way to our lives. Today, Australia is home to people from more than 300 different ancestries, a nation of many languages, cultures and faiths. Australians celebrate Christmas and Easter, Lunar New Year, Hanukkah, Diwali, Ramadan, Holi, and so many other celebrations. And I'm always grateful as a representative of a very diverse community to be included in these celebrations and to learn from my neighbours in my community. It is really important, Deputy Speaker, that when we celebrate Harmony Week and when we celebrate Harmony Day, we commit ourselves to doing everything we can every single day to make sure that every person in our community really does count and that we take steps to eliminate racial discrimination and violence when they do occur, so that we can continue to be the best example of multiculturalism in the world. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
I call the member for Menzies.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise today to speak on the International Day I rise today to speak on the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. We must never forget that this day has its origins in one of the darkest chapters of the 20th century. On 21st of March 1960, in the South African township of Sharpeville, thousands of people gathered to peacefully protest the apartheid pass laws that controlled and restricted the movement of black South Africans. Police opened fire on the crowd. 69 people were killed and more than 180 were wounded. Many were shot in the back as they fled. The Sharpeville massacre rightly shocked the world, but it did not happen in isolation. It was the most egregious symptom of a system built upon racial discrimination and white supremacy, a system that did not recognise the inherent equality of all people, regardless of race. In response, the international community took a stand. The United Nations declared 21st of March the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, a day to remember those who lost their lives and that renewed our commitment to building societies free from racism and hatred. The day stands as a stark reminder of the ultimate consequences of failing to be vigilant against racism, of perpetuating inherently racist systems, of not questioning those institutions that dehumanise people from backgrounds different from our own. 21st of March is also Harmony Day, a day that was created by the Howard government. And Harmony Week, which was created around it, spans 16th to the 22nd of March. Now, in our suburbs, Harmony Week is usually celebrated in our kindergartens and in our schools and in our workplaces, and people from different cultural backgrounds have the opportunity to celebrate their cultures and to share their cultures with their workmates, with their classmates, and there is value in this. There is value in people being able to celebrate their cultures and pass them on to the wider community. But we must never forget that the 21st of March is the International Day for the Elimination of all forms of racial discrimination. And we can celebrate, but we must also guard against the worst consequences of racism. Sadly, we are in a period where racism and prejudice are growing, both in Australia and around the world, where prejudice, discrimination and hatred are increasingly directed at people because of who they are and how they look, where they come from and what they believe. I recently had a conversation with Rana at the Multicultural Youth Advisory Network, who shared a study showing that young people are experiencing increasing racism in schools at higher rates than past generations. Now, Deputy Speaker, I believe that children are born without prejudice. If you ever speak to a kindergartner or if you ever speak to someone in primary school, they don't know the difference between the different races of friends. They just approach them as fellow human beings, as we all should. Prejudice is something that people are taught. In recent months, we have seen too many instances of the ultimate horrific consequences of racism. The anti-Semitic Bondi terrorist attacks, Australia's worst terrorist attack, where 15 innocent members of the Jewish community lost their lives. We've seen an alleged attempted white supremacist terror attack against Aboriginal people, where a bomb was thrown into a peaceful Invasion Day rally. We've seen neo-Nazis attack Camp Sovereignty in Melbourne, and we've seen letters threatening violence sent to Lakemba Mosque. As I've said in this parliament before, prejudice comes in waves, and bullies will always target the most vulnerable. We've seen Muslim Australians targeted. We've seen Jewish Australians face hostility and fear. And of course, we know that our First Nations people have carried the burden of discrimination for generations. Australia has always been shaped by migrants, people who bring their languages and traditions and faiths and experiences, and those experiences enrich our nation. Together, these stories have built the country that we share today. We've seen British migrants and Afghan cameleers and Chinese miners, Sikh Anzacs, Persians, Greeks, Italians, people from every country on earth. Our modern Australian identity is one defined by diversity.
Yeah.
And Australia is one of the most successful multicultural countries in the world. I'm a product of this multicultural Australia. My father, John, is a Chinese Singaporean immigrant. He came to Australia in the 1970s and has worked as a licensed aircraft maintenance engineer. He's only retired this year, although he'll still take the occasional shift because he can't help himself. And like many migrants of this generation, he arrived with skills and determination and a belief that this country offered an opportunity and a fair go, and that is what it has delivered, and he is extremely grateful for all the opportunities that Australia has provided. And my mum is an Anglo-Celtic Australian, and my wife is Japanese. So I know that multiculturalism works because I live it every single day. My life has been enormously enriched due to my connection with British culture and Chinese culture and Singaporean and Japanese cultures. That's why I joined the then Department of Immigration and now Department of Home Affairs and worked in migrant and refugee settlement and multicultural affairs for over a decade. Because I know that multiculturalism works, but I know it's also something that we need to work on. That social cohesion doesn't just happen, but it's something that we have to back up, both in our words, but also in our actions as a government. I also love our institutions of government, and I think we as a country don't celebrate them enough sometimes. In my career, I've been fortunate enough to work across the three arms of government. I've worked in the executive as a public servant, in the judiciary, as a judge's associate and as a lawyer, and now I'm fortunate enough to be able to work in the legislature. We, in Australia, were one of the first countries in the world to give women the vote. We invented the secret ballot, in other parts of the world known as the Australian ballot. We have a compulsory system of voting that means that we must speak to the middle of Australia, to the majority of Australians, and it also encourages all Australians to have their say. These are institutions that we can celebrate and also that we can rally around regardless of our backgrounds. In my electorate of Menzies, the success of multiculturalism is visible everywhere. Around 44% of people living in the electorate were born overseas, and around 58% of people have at least have a parent born overseas. It's one of the most diverse electorates in the country. Within a few suburbs, you'll find people of Chinese background, Malaysian, Singaporean, Italian, Greek, Iranian, and many other parts of the world. And this diversity shapes our community. You can see it in our schoolyards, where kids of all backgrounds play together, in small businesses. The Manningham Small Business Network has people from a range of backgrounds coming together to collaborate, and in our community organisation. It shapes the language spoken at home and the festivals that we celebrate in our local streets. And it also is a constant reminder that modern Australia is a diverse Australia, and that Australia works, if we work for it. At the 2025 election, Australians across the country voted overwhelmingly for a parliament that reflects the diversity of modern Australia. If you look at our side of the parliament, we're beginning to reflect that diversity. And it's not just about tokenism. It's that people from different backgrounds bring different skills, bring different cultural knowledge, bring different language skills. And that allows us to better govern for all Australians, regardless of their background. That is why we have a dedicated Minister for Multicultural Affairs that is sitting in Cabinet for the first time. It's a clear signal that we value diversity and recognise that it's central to who we are as a nation. Now, in my first speech, I also spoke about the effect of Pauline Hanson's maiden speech on me. That even though, as a child and as a young person, I'd experienced isolated instances of racism that were enough to remember but didn't make a significant impact on me, Pauline Hanson's maiden speech was, for the first time, made me feel like I was a second-class Australian, that I wasn't Australian as others in some people's eyes. And there are some in this place that maybe aren't as overt as Pauline Hanson is now to this day, but that will dog whistle. And I warn those people who might engage in those type of politics, who might imply racism or hint at discrimination for political advantage, that for people of migrant background, a dog whistle is a megaphone. Yes. We know what you're saying, we hear what you're saying. Yes. It doesn't go past us. There might be some parts of the community that you reach, but we in Multicultural Australia are modern Australia. This is what Australia looks like now, and we govern from modern multicultural Australia in all its diversity. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Hear, hear.
I call the member for Tangi.
Can I have this, please? Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. A few weeks ago, I was asked about my migration to Australia and whether I faced any discrimination when I first migrated to Australia in 2002. I was in my early 40s when I migrated with my wife and 3 young children. My English was broken. Even today, I have a strong accent. My heritage is Malaysian Chinese. My ancestry is one of the 162 ancestry that we have in my electorates of Tangney. I reflected upon this question. If I say no, I will be lying. But I also have tried to focus on all the positive people who make my family and I feel more Aussie. Neighbours like Uncle Bruce Baker, who I have talked about before. My friends, my English teacher, Sama Agov, and my police brother and sister, especially Inspector Don Emmanuel Smith, and my mentor, the late John Harty. Australia made me who I am. The police force accepted me into police force. The community accepted me campaigning to be a member of parliament, to be a parliamentarian. And now I'm here, second term as a member of parliament for Tangney. I generally focus on positives. I talk about the success we have in multiculturalism and all the positive progress I have seen since migrating here more than 20 years ago. I talk about the good work that I see happening in Tangney from the work of the WA Multicultural Lions Club and the culturally responsive aged care provided by Chorus and the Chonghua Community Care. I'm proud of our 13 community language school in Tangney and of bilingual school like Alberta Primary School. Our Tangney community welcomed my family and I all those years ago. And we continue to embrace people like me with warmth and love and welcome. But as I praise our community's strengths, I also know the other side, and the racial discrimination that happens far too often. When I was a police officer, during COVID, I have many people from Australian Chinese community approach me, reach out, because they were being targeted. They were being racially abused and blamed for COVID. They had racist remarks yelled at their faces, returned on their driveways, including their cars. They were scared to leave their houses, especially some of the migrants who did not have good enough English, unable to talk back. Most of them didn't want to report these incidents. But because I looked like them, they were comfortable talking to me in police uniform. My colleagues and I make a project asking our police officers to let us know when there was a racially motivated attack. And together, we work to put a stop to what was happening at that time. Every year on March 21st, we observe the International Day of the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, because on that day in 1960, 69 people were killed during a peaceful demonstration in South Africa against the apartheid pass law, which restricted the movement of many black South Africans. Next week is also Harmony Week, which closes with the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. As Australia marks both moments, I want to reflect on both. I have conversations with my constituents about the racism they face in their daily lives, assumptions based on how they look or their names. A long time ago, a friend of mine could not get a job, so he decided to change his name on his CV to something that sounds more white and less Chinese. Eventually, he got a job, and now he has moved up the ranks and is very senior in his role. Madam Speaker, I have spoken about some of the really ugly display of racial discrimination that I saw during COVID when I was a police officer. But the example above is one of the acts of racial discrimination that happens every day. I have seen and heard constituents have their essence questioned, their capability challenged, and their loyalty disputed. Racial and ethnic discrimination happens daily, and it hinders the progress for people in our community, across Australia, especially in Tangney as well, and around the world. Racism has no place in our world. It is a challenging time right now. The Bondi attack, the rise of anti-immigrant sentiment, and the terrorist attack in Perth. I speak with Tangney constituents who tell me they are frightened by what they see happening around them. Some people talk to me about how they feel unwelcome or no longer welcome. Others have reached out to me and talk about how they feel the social contract is disappearing. They ask that we find ways to hear each other and respect each other, including our political and civic leaders, even when we disagree, especially when we disagree. I want to contrast this with some of the recent events in my electorates that I have attended. Last weekend, I attended the Australian Sikh Heritage Trail in Riverton. The trails provide visitors with information about the history and heritage of Australian Sikhs, as well as the information about Wajak Noongar culture and the Canning River. The people participating in this event have so much respect for one another, It is an opportunity to learn more about Sikh culture and the history of Sikhs in Australia, a story that is not always well understood. I thank the organizer for sharing this experience with me. Tangney is one of the most multicultural electorates in Australia. A few weeks ago, I also attended an event on mental health that was jointly organized by WA Multicultural Lions Club and the Melbourne Baha'i community. The guest speaker was Tangney resident Nick Titov AO. We have people from all ancestry and backgrounds in that room sharing their experiences and learning from each other. It was an everyday event that shows how we deliberately work to build harmony and a community where everyone belongs. This event and those across Tangney remind me of how multiculturalism is a strength in our community, in our country. The decision to choose to live, work, and play together across all races, languages, religions, and culture is our strength of our community. As I said in my first speech as a Member of Parliament a few years ago, peace, love, unity, respect. 4 simple words that I choose to live by. 4 simple actions that we need more in this world. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I call the member for Swan.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. On the 21st of March in 1960, Black South Africans were gathered at Sharpeville. They came to protest apartheid laws that had passed, which controlled where Black people could live, work and walk. Police opened fire on these innocent people. 69 people were killed, more than 180 injured, and many shot as they fled. In response to the United Nations, they marked the 21st of March as the International Day of Elimination of Racial Discrimination, a reminder of the cost of racist laws and policies and our duty to oppose it. This day isn't just a date in your calendar, it is a day that calls us to act, to listen and to change.
Yeah.
Recently, we have seen the cost of hate in Australia. In Bondi on the 14th of December, 15 innocent people were murdered in a targeted anti-Semitic attack. This was the worst terrorist attack Australia had ever seen, and it was motivated by hatred to a community because of their beliefs. This is not the Australia I know. Across our country, racism has been rising. Anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-Asian, anti-Black hatred, hostility towards First Nations people, and attacks on migrants. This is leaving communities feeling unsafe and unheard. Our neighbours have been targeted. Our institutions have felt the strain. We cannot accept this as normal. In this Parliament, I've said this before and I say it again today, modern Australia is multicultural Australia, and this is our strength. And in modern Australia, there is no room for racism, whether that be online, on a mine site, in a bar, in an office, in our schools, or our Parliament House.
Yeah.
I grew up in Cambelda, a nickel mining town in regional WA. People came from every corner of Australia, and they came from every corner of our globe. And everyone worked together to raise a life, build a living, and also raise their children. I had an extraordinary childhood, and we looked after each other's backs, and I felt like I belonged. In fact, everyone felt like they belonged. This is the Australia that I know. This is multiculturalism in practice. And guess what? The modern Australian Labor Party looks like modern Australia. And I'm here with the member for Tangi, and I was very proud to be elected with you in 2022. And we have been able to achieve some incredible things over the last 2 elections. It is amazing to be a part of the most diverse government in history. And this is a government that is more reflective of the cultural and linguistic diversity that has enriched Australia for generations. This representation matters. When our decision-making bodies reflect our communities, trust grows and belonging deepens. Policy can then do what it should do, include. For any little boy or any little girl out there who wants to be a member of Parliament or even the Prime Minister, know that when you grow up, that you belong here. I was the first person of colour to be elected to the seat of Swan, and I will not be the last. Harmony Week starts on Monday the 16th of March and builds towards the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination on the 21st, a week that asks us to practice respect, to listen and to reflect on our past. Our national story began tens of thousands of years ago, with the world's oldest continuous culture, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. For 60,000 years, this is an amazing history and this is our shared inheritance. But the past is still present, and truth-telling shows us that. And in fact, the member for Bonner was here in this place and shared an amazing story of Uncle Bob. And the thing that we need to continue to do is face our history, because honesty and truth-telling makes room for healing and justice strengthens our social fabric. As one of my elders in my community says, you need to know where you're from to know where you are going. I have seen the power of people being seen and heard when communities share their experience of racism, when institutions listen with humility. We see that understanding grows, and so does connection, and so does cohesion. When harm happens, we need to make sure that we let people know what the standard is. And I like to reflect on who we are as Australians. And the thing that I see in Australia is that we're one of the most egalitarian societies. We actually hate hierarchy and power distance. And we have this fundamental belief in a fair go for all, right? And so when I say all, I mean all. And so we need to make sure that we let people know what these Australian standards are. And so what I would say is that if racism is ignored, it does not fade. What happens instead is it mutates and it escalates. It finds new outlets in online platforms and in bystander silence. Preventing the next generation from learning hate matters even more. And so listen to this. Children are not born with hate. Yes. They learn it. Right. And it is our job to interrupt that cycle with clarity, courage and leadership. I welcome the work of the Attorney General in the wake of Bondi terror attacks, as it recognised that those who teach hate to children harm our society and harm children in their care. That's right. Alongside this measure, the government's new laws against hate and extremism and anti-Semitism creates penalties for hate crime offences and new frameworks to list organisations as prohibited hate groups and also prohibiting hate symbols. We have also introduced new visa cancellation powers for people who spread hate or extremism. I also want to highlight our amazing Minister for Multicultural Affairs. She has spent her life helping communities stand strong against fear and is backing that work with real structures and real supports, including the new Office for Multicultural Affairs, which is about inclusion, coordinating settlement services and community grants, and a lot more. What's pretty extraordinary is that in the 48th Parliament, we have the first Cabinet Minister at the Cabinet table with multicultural affairs at the table. This is an example of structural changes that governments can do to make sure that we're thinking of the way that we be more inclusive. The Minister is also incredibly well qualified and has done amazing work in de-radicalisation. And so the thing that she has shown is that people caught up in hate have a pathway to reorientate themselves. And so we have a responsibility as a society to help put people on the right track. So the work that we're doing is not just about representation and celebration. It's about delivering policies that actually invests, listens and include. This representation matters. When our decision-making bodies reflect our communities, trust grows and belonging deepens, and policy can do exactly what we want it to do. And government has a role, community has a role. We're investing in initiatives that build respect, connection and resilience, and we're strengthening the organisations that bring people together. Inclusion is nation building, and human rights are Australian values, right? And we need to make sure that we continue to invest in them, especially during the tough times. And if you talk to any parent, they want their kids to be safe, whether that's safe in their uniform, safe in a headscarf, safe in a yarmulke, safe online as well. And safety starts with us. The words that we chose, the words that we choose and what we refuse to let pass. Talk to any young person. They want to belong. They want to be seen on our screens and in our parliaments. And when we see them and when they see themselves, they see the future. This day begins in grief, but our response must be action. If you hear a slur, don't look away. If you see exclusion, make space. If you hold power, open doors wider. If you have a platform, lift others. If you're unsure, listen first. Make space in meetings, on panels, at the microphone. If you hold a chair, share the chair. Know the history of where you stand. This is an incredible country. We can continue to eliminate this. Thank you.
I call the member for Warringah.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Chair. And I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional elders and owners of the land on which we meet and pay my respect to elders past and present, acknowledging, of course, that we can't talk about racism without acknowledging that incredible custodianship of First Nations Australians. We don't talk about racism enough in this place, I would say. When we do, too often we talk about it in the abstract, when racism in Australia is still structural. It's persistent and it causes real harm. It damages health, it drives exclusion, it distorts who gets heard, who gets hired and who gets believed, who gets care and who gets punished. The Australian Human Rights Commission has been explicit. Racism in healthcare is a public health emergency, and racism in Australia remains a whole-of-society problem requiring reform across law, justice, health, education, workplaces, media and data collection. So, this day cannot just be about moral statements and symbolic outrage. It actually has to follow with action. The 21st of March is the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination and should force some honesty in this parliament. Because the truth is Australia doesn't do enough to celebrate our multiculturalism. It likes to celebrate it, but it's still far too reluctant to confront racism with the seriousness it deserves and really call it out when it's occurring. Australia is one of the most diverse countries in the world. Nearly half of all Australians are born overseas or have at least one parent born overseas. More than 1 in 5 Australians speak a language other than English at home. And this continent is home to the oldest continuing culture on earth, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. That diversity is one of our great strengths. But diversity is not justice. And diversity means very little if institutions continue to entrench racism barriers and norms. Today should not be about just condemning racism in principle and talking about how we can the small things that can be done. We actually have to talk about eliminating it in practice. The International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination is observed on the 21st of March, and it's important to acknowledge why that date has been selected. And that's the day that, it's a day marked in tragedy. It's a day where police in Sharpeville in South Africa killed 69 people at a peaceful protest against apartheid laws in 1960. And since there's been so many more incidents of murder and killing around the world that are based on racial and racism and racial hatred. Last year marked the 60th anniversary of the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, which is a treaty that commits states to take immediate and effective action to eliminate racial discrimination. And it's a day, as I said, that comes from bloodshed. It comes from the recognition that racism can be embedded in law, normalised by institutions and protected by silence. And that history matters in Australia. Racism here is not incidental to our national story. It sits inside the story of dispossession, the White Australia policy, exclusion, over-policing, under-treatment and political scapegoating. More than half of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people surveyed in the 2024 Australian Reconciliation Barometer said they had experienced racism in the past 6 months. 56 believe Australia is a racist country. Among younger First Nations adults, the numbers are worse. 63% of the 18 to 24-year-olds and 68% of 25 to 34-year-olds reporting experiences of racism. In workplaces, new research released this week found that almost 60% of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander employees experience racism, and in the current rate of change, it could take 118 years before Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander workers no longer hear racial slurs and jokes at work. I mean, that is just ridiculous. In universities, its Human Rights Commission's racism at uni found racism is widespread and systemic across the sector. Almost 70% of respondents reported indirect racism, 15% reported direct interpersonal racism, and trust in complaint system was found to be extremely low. So clearly, in the university sector, major issues that need resolving. And in our justice system, First Nations people remain grotesquely overrepresented. We are absolutely failing on this front. As of the December quarter of 2025, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people accounted for 37% of all prisoners in Australia, despite making up such a smaller part of the population. The imprisonment rate for First Nations men was 4,774 per 100,000, and just so much higher than for anyone else. Racism is not only about individual prejudice, it's institutional. And we can see that through our state and territory laws. They are at their heart racist in how they are looking at the incarceration of young people. We know Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children are overrepresented, and once engaged with the criminal system, the incidence of recurrence and the likelihood of being able to change someone's life's direction is so much less. So racism is not a fringe issue. It shapes health outcomes, education outcomes, justice outcomes, employment outcomes and social cohesion. The Australian Human Rights Commission delivered the National Anti-Racism Framework in November 2024. I have in fact spoken about that framework a number of times in this place. It contains 63 recommendations across legal reform, justice, health, education, workplaces, media and arts and data collection. And yet, I asked members of government, we have not had a response. The government must publicly respond to the National Anti-Racism Framework and commit to an implementation plan with timelines, accountability and funding. I've heard great sentiment and great contributions in this place from members of government, but what we haven't heard is a commitment by the government to implement the recommendations or the funding to implement the recommendations. We see some groups obtain results much quicker, and yet this anti-racism framework sits there on the shelf for now 2 years. The recommendations are clear. What's missing is the commitment and the political will by the Albanese government to implement them. We can't keep commissioning reports, thanking people for their lived experience and then shelving the implementation. A framework without delivery is not reform, it's just delay with better branding. Leadership also means refusing to exploit race, religion or ethnicity for political gain. Too often in this place, that is what we see. Leadership means treating all racism seriously, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-Aboriginal racism, because the statistics are too ugly to avoid. It's treating all incidents with the same urgency and seriousness. I was appalled at the delay in the consideration of the terrorism, the attempted terrorism attack on the Invasion Day rallies in Western Australia, and the delay in calling that for what it is, and the continued double standards in how different acts of racism are treated. Leadership means calling out racist conduct inside this parliament as well, not just outside it. And as I said just recently, the immigration law amendments by the government is a racist policy. It is seeking to classify people as a whole, treat them as a group on a basis of race or nationality. When racism is tolerated in this building, it sends a message to all Australians watching that abuse is normal. It can't be. I'm calling on the government to publicly respond to the National Anti-Racism Framework and commit to an implementation plan with timelines, accountability and funding. In health, that means embedding cultural safety standards, anti-racism training, interpreter access and community-led services. The Commission's review on health inequities could not be clearer. Racism in the health system contributes to poor health, chronic illness, mistrust and premature death. In justice, it means legislating a federally consistent age of criminal responsibility so we stop locking up children. It should be 14. We have signed on to the UN Conventions for the Rights of the Child. It is unacceptable that we continue at federal level to pass the buck down to state and territories and allow them to lock up children as young as 10. Over-incarceration, deaths in custody, punitive youth justice settings and the failure to address systemic bias shows our systems are broken. In workplaces and universities, it means complaint systems people actually trust, leadership accountability, workforce diversity, proper data and consequences for repeated failure. And in politics, it means ending the cynical use of fear, division and coded rhetoric for political gain. The International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination asks whether we are serious about eliminating racial discrimination. On the evidence so far, we're still far better at naming racism than ending it. So I urge everyone in this place to do better.
I call the member for Ford.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I appreciate this opportunity to talk about today the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. It is something which is, as a white guy in society, something which I personally, this is one thing I can say, I personally have never experienced. Maybe a little bit with the name of Holzberger as a kid, but it's nothing compared to a story that I want to tell in a second about somebody very close to me and the experiences that she had in Australia growing up in the 1970s. But I just would like to just respond to a couple of things that were brought up while I was present during this this session, and one by the member for Swan, when she talked about Australia being a country that values not having a very high, not having a well-established hierarchy, and whenever I'm trying to explain Australian politics to people, I refer them to that video of the Prime Minister Scott Morrison trying to hold a press conference out the front of somebody's house. And you may be familiar with it. It's when the guy came out and he said, "Oi, what are you doing? Get off my lawn! I've just reseeded it." And the Prime Minister had to apologise as he shuffled back with the media gaggle behind him. I think there is no better description of what Australian politics and Australian society is than that short clip. And when I had a young Afghan friend of mine told me about the Afghan community, when they saw that video, they were horrified that it could happen, horrified for the guy's safety. That if that had tried to, if that person had said that in Afghanistan, then he would have been carted off for some serious re-education. And so it is in Australia that we do value that equality. And the other thing I'd say also that I just wanted to reflect on was the member for Warringah's comments regarding that institutional racism. It is not just words or slights or offensive comments that is racism. It is where laws lead to that discrimination. Obviously, the biggest example is where this day comes from, where the laws relating to apartheid resulted in the Sharpeville massacre. But in Australia, more practically, they result in, as the member for Warringah pointed out, disproportionately high, and that, geez, what an understatement that is, but disproportionately high incarceration of Aboriginal Torres Strait Island people, but also in the access that migrant communities have to government services, such as the NDIS. That it's pretty obvious when you look at the number that multicultural communities, that there are barriers there for them to participating in the NDIS or in aged care. So even though these are not designed to be like this, this is the end result, and there is no way that you could describe them other than being institutional problems. But where I think racism is at its most destructive on a personal level is when people treat you differently because of the colour of your skin or because of where you've come from or because of your name or whatever. And so there is and I will never have the opportunity I haven't discussed this with her, so I don't want to say who it is. But if you could hear her words, you would cry. But her father was an African man who came out from Australia on an educational program to do a Greek degree in the 70s, and met a white Australian woman, and so she was born a African Australian dark-skinned girl in Australia in the 1970s, and she, from her earliest memories, encountered racism. The stories that she told about being excluded in the playground just conjured up that image of me of this little girl being bullied, being excluded as a 5-year-old. Is just if you could hear it from her, it would break your heart. And so at the heart of this is to remember that the truly corrosive nature of racism on an individual, but also the dehumanising that it does for the abuser as well. That I think that at the heart of this, there are individuals to be considered. In Ford, I think the seat that I have the great privilege of representing, you have I think you've got the oldest continuous culture in the world, the Indigenous culture that has been there for tens of thousands of years. And you've got communities like mine with the name of Holzberger, where my ancestors got off the ship somewhere around the 1870s and set up to work around Beenleigh, where they set up thriving cane farming and dairy and timber businesses. And you have in Logan and the Northern Gold Coast one of the most multicultural communities in the world. The local mayor, John Raven, always makes a joke that there's only one culture, there's only one city with more cultures in it than Logan, and that is a little place you might have heard of called New York. We are one of the most diverse and vibrant communities that you could hope to find. And Ford very much is, to me, it is ancient Australia and old Australia and modern Australia. And it is, I think, within that, it is in that community that I think today when I talk about eliminating racial discrimination. I think there is a lot of division in Australia today. I tend to think in many ways, while you see the rise of one nation, I think that at its heart it is not because Australia is a fundamentally racist country. I think that most of the division that we see comes about from the economics that governments have got wrong over the last couple of decades. I think it's been an agenda of privatisation and economic rationalism. It has been a failure to build public housing. It has been a failure to share the wealth which Australia has undoubtedly created over the last couple of decades, to share that wealth equitably. And that's to refer back to the member for Swan. That's where people see a threat to our egalitarian society, that as Australia, which prided itself on egalitarianism, sees such economic challenges. That's where I think the true heart of division is, because in the hearts of Australians is a very welcoming and a very accepting people. There's one thing, and I would like to take issue with this one, when people say that Australia is a Judeo-Christian culture. And I went looking for the Obama quote, which I can't find, which might be good for two reasons, because one, whatever I say, however I say it, is going to be nowhere near as eloquent as Obama said, so you're not going to be able to compare it. Surprised, you may be surprised. The other is that I can pass it off as my own quote, because if I couldn't find it, there's a chance you're not going to be able to find it. Anyway, whatever he said, that is inspired. It really inspires me to say this, which is that what makes Australia exceptional is not that we haven't had flaws. It's that we are a country which has emerged out of the Enlightenment based on science and reason. And while religion had enormous civilising impact, that religion acted as a cradle for knowledge, and while the social justice aspect to the Judeo-Christian tradition are so powerful, it is the fact that Australia is a country that believes fundamentally in human rights. And if you can apply those human rights across laws, across systems, across institutions, if you can always keep in the mind that you've got another human being on the end of the conversation or the Facebook comment that you're going to make, then that is how I think that we wipe out racial discrimination. Today is both a commemoration, I think, of a massacre, but a celebration of a future.
I call the member for Latrobe.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm going to take the words of Reverend Tim Costello. Remember, I was at a multicultural event with him a number of years ago, and he said racism always starts with lack of understanding, then fear, then hate. And the more we work on that in Australia, the better it's going to be. And can I just say, I had the great privilege under the former Prime Minister Scott Morrison of looking after multicultural affairs for 3 years, and also under Opposition Leader Peter Dutton. And overall, can I just say, Australia is a country which does embrace multicultural communities. I go to my local cricket teams in Latrobe, and can I say, a number of years ago, you wouldn't see a Sri Lankan or Indian kid there. Now the clubs are booming with the Indian and Sri Lankan cricket players, and it makes a huge difference to get involved. And can I say, when it comes to sport, sport is one of the key ones which brings everyone together. And the AFL, I must admit, had the issues over the years, but they've taken a very strong stance now, and they actually, if anyone in the crowd racially abuses a player, well, they're not only kicked out of the game, they're normally banned for some time. Also, I think it's important when I talk about to multicultural groups, I say to them how important it is to keep the mother language at home when they speak to their children, to make sure that is the language of their mother tongue they speak to them at home. And the reason is it also helps the youngster keep that traditional spirit alive. And in fact, my home, the number one language is not English, it's actually Cantonese. My daughter speaks, she's only 11, speaks Cantonese fluently, and Mandarin. And I always know when I'm in trouble, Madam Deputy Speaker, when I either hear the name Daddy or Jason mentioned in Cantonese, I've done something wrong. But it's great to have that in the household. I must admit, when I first met when I first started going with my wife at the time, Judy, I tried to impress her relatives in Hong Kong by speaking a bit of Cantonese, and I tried to say she's a beautiful young woman, which was going to be Judy's Lang Loi, but I said Lang Lo, which I said she's a beautiful old man. So it's very important to get language correct. So when it comes to discrimination too, we had that awful terrorist attack in Christchurch a number of years ago, and I acknowledged the work of former Prime Minister Scott Morrison, and he gave me the great task of looking after the Community Safety Fund for places of worship, and we put funding when it came to Jewish communities, to the synagogues and the schools. And can I just say, back even then, I was shocked when I went to some of these schools. I remember going, in particular, I think it was in Western Australia, you could feel the fear in those communities when I met with them. And the great news was we end up delivering funding for those groups. And the same with mosques. I also intervened on a number of the Australian Islamic Museum in Melbourne, and I must admit I was a bit annoyed when the Labor Party took me to the Auditor-General because I intervened to actually assist the mosques out in a number of, how should I say, Indian groups from the Sikhs, and a lot of these groups too, they couldn't put in the application, they didn't have the money to pay the high-level consultants, but when you went and met them, you realised there was fear there. And in particular, the fear was quite often, when it came to even for the Buddhist community, their religious leaders staying back overnight and sleeping at the places of worship, and you're having, and I'd say, as a former police officer, druggies breaking in there and stealing the collection boxes, but potentially putting in or in danger the religious leaders. So that funding worked very well in ensuring those places were protected. But more always needs to be done. And again, I come back to sport. And my daughter, it's great when you see the kids play together. They don't know the difference between nationalities or backgrounds. The kids just want to play. And I think in sport and children are the way forward. So I'll leave it there, Madam Deputy Speaker, but again, it's a very important International Day for Elimination of Racial Discrimination. Thank you.
I call the Minister for Skills and Training.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Deputy Speaker. I rise to make some brief remarks on a very important debate that should be debated in this Parliament to recognise the significance of the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. This pays tribute to the victims of an awful racist attack recognised by the United Nations. But it's not about looking back. It's about looking at our country today and recognising the good and the challenges. It's also about looking forward. And for me, I'm inspired by the words said in the chamber earlier today by my friend, the Minister for Multicultural Affairs, Anne Ali, who really looked at our country squarely but optimistically, seeing the extraordinary opportunities that are before us. And for me, they fall broadly into two categories. I do think that the greatest success of modern Australia is the multicultural society that we have built. Its strength, its diversity at so many levels. It drives our economy, it makes our communities so special. And I'm here with my friend, the member for Chisholm, who sees this absolutely every day in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne. That's one bit. The other bit is, of course, the 65,000 years of continuous culture that we have the privilege of sharing. These two things together make our country special, and it's something that I think all of us should celebrate. But in celebrating these things, we can't take them for granted or ignore the threats. And an insidious threat is the ongoing prevalence of racism, other forms of hate. In our country, everyone should be proud of who they are and proud to be Australian, everywhere. We know, sadly, right now, that isn't the case. All of us reflect on the awful act of terror that was committed in Bondi and its repercussions that continue in our communities around the country. We reflect also on the act committed by an Australian in Christchurch years ago, another act born of hate. I think in my own community about the attack last year of two women at the Epping Plaza shopping centre because of how they were dressed, visibly Muslim women. And of course, we look in a short time to the International Day, to the recognition of combating Islamophobia too. With our First Nations people, we think about the pain inflicted directly on people in Perth on the 26th of January, but how that reverberates. Now, I know that these incidents do not reflect how Australia is, but all of us here in this place and in our communities need to be absolutely unequivocal in condemning racism and hatred in all of its forms. I recognise the work in my own community, particularly the work led by Whittlesea Community Connections, in finding better answers to address the pain and the hurt of racism. I think about the work we can all do to foster a closer sense of belonging and understanding through interfaith networks, through listening to each other more carefully. And for all of us in this place and all of us who occupy positions in public life, perhaps for thinking about the words that we use and reflecting more on their impact on others, thinking about how through our words and our deeds we can help build a society where mutual respect and a sense of belonging are non-negotiables. I firmly believe that our diversity is our greatest strength as a community. It's something I see every day and take inspiration from. I think there's so much to celebrate in the cultural festivals, but as Minister Ali said today, to paraphrase her remarks, it's one thing to celebrate these things, but we shouldn't celebrate them if we're not prepared to defend them. And the very idea of a country in which everyone is respected and which everyone belongs. And fundamental to doing that is dealing squarely with racism and other forms of hatred wherever they form. And perhaps recognising this, where racism is present, it harms individuals, and I think all of us recognise that. But I think it's more insidious than that. I think the existence of racism hurts us as a society too. On this day, we should all commit ourselves to eliminating this ugliness from our national life.
The Minister, and I call the member for Solomon.
You want that? Thank you, Deputy Speaker. My colleague, the Minister for International Development, Multicultural Affairs and Small Business, the Honourable Dr Anne Alley, spoke today honouring the UN International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. Next week, from Monday the 16th to Sunday the 22nd of March, Australians will mark Harmony Week. This year, Harmony Week holds a much more sombre note, coming 3 short months after the horrific anti-Semitic Bondi terror attack and 2 racially motivated planned attacks in Perth that were intercepted by the police. And I want to give a shout out to our police, whether it be at the state and territory level or at the federal level, for the work that they do. Also acknowledge that the Islamophobic incident at an iftar dinner in Ballarat last night. As the Prime Minister has said really clearly, we've got a really heightened environment at the moment and people need to dial it down. And this is why Harmony Week must be a call to action, because Harmony Week does not stand alone. On the 15th of March, we will acknowledge the International Day to Combat Islamophobia, where we stand against discrimination in all its forms. The United Nations General Assembly, with the sponsorship of 60 member states of the Organisation of Islamic Cooperation, adopted a resolution designating March 15 as the International Day to Combat Islamophobia. This date commemorates the tragic Christchurch mosque attacks, the deadliest act of terrorism against Muslims in our region. It marks a solemn remembrance of the gravest act of terrorism against Muslims in our region. This year, the anniversary coincides with the holy month of Ramadan, a period of deep spiritual reflection and heightened communal activity for Muslims. I want to acknowledge the Islamic Society of Darwin, the Ramadan Grand Iftar and Dinner that I attended recently and spoke at. But also I couldn't attend, but my staff represented me at the UMNT annual Interfaith Iftar Dinner that was titled Shoulder to Shoulder, Standing with Australian Muslims, Upholding Australian Values. I want to acknowledge some of our community leaders. I haven't got time to acknowledge more, but the Islamic Council of the Northern Territory, ICNT Chairman, Mr Sadaruddin Chowdhury, who I work with and speak with a lot, but also the Palmerston President, Qasim Mujid, and the Darwin President, Michael Kadab Mohammed, and also the UMNT President, Mr Mohammed Razauddin Razi. Deputy Speaker, the Australian Muslim community has in recent times experienced an alarming surge in Islamophobic and anti-Muslim hate incidents that not only threaten the safety of Australian Muslims, but also undermine the principles of diversity, inclusion and social cohesion. Reports from community bodies indicate a troubling rise in threats in hate correspondence directed at mosques and Islamic centres, and incidents of verbal and physical abuse, particularly targeting visibly Muslim women. Addressing Islamophobia is not solely a matter for one community. It goes to the heart of who we are as a nation. Protecting Australians from hate-motivated violence and intimidation is essential to safeguarding our democratic freedoms, our social cohesion, and our national stability and security. When any community feels unsafe, the strength of our national fabric is weakened. And connection is what we need right now, both in Australia and all around the world. Moments like iftar are precious because they allow people to come together and connect over a meal, connect in conversation, and connect in mutual respect. I want to give a shout out to my good mate, the Assistant Minister for Foreign Affairs and the member for Kingsford Smith, who attended an iftar dinner last night with the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, DFAT, and also members of the Diplomatic Corps. Deputy Speaker, it's not rocket science to look at our own communities and the diversity within those communities, but also to look at our region in the Indo-Pacific and further afield to understand that these issues are important to our neighbours and are important to our friends. Harmony Week culminates with the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination on the 21st of March, which is a day that reminds us that racism is not abstract. It is not just historical and it is not harmless. Racism is an evil. And while this day always falls within Harmony Week, this important international day, as all honourable members know, is a day born of tragedy. On the 21st of March 1960, peaceful protesters in Sharpeville, South Africa, gathered to demonstrate against the apartheid government's oppressive pass laws, which restricted the movement of black South Africans. Police opened fire on the crowd, killing 69 people and injuring more than 180. That massacre at Sharpeville became one of the most defining moments of the struggle against apartheid and has become emblematic with the struggle against racism generally. Deputy Speaker, I want to wish our communities across Australia all the best for Harmony Week. I'll be attending events in my electorate, as I'm sure all honourable members that want to stand against racism and promote harmony as an important role for us as local members will also do. Thanks, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. There being no further statements, I call the member for Macon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I move that the Federation Chamber do now adjourn.
Thank you. And I call the member for New England.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I want to start by reading something we've just received. I'm getting lots of these. As of today, the main Shell truck bowsers in Tamworth are empty of fuel, yet still pumping air and charging us for the privilege. The unmanned site has now created a significant administrative burden. We cannot get confirmation about restocking timeframes, and we are told refunds may take 24 to 48 hours. It's left our staff to cross-check and reconcile what fuel, if any, our trucks actually received. One of the trucks, fueling from 2 separate bowsers, accumulated over $200 on the metre before the driver realised the pumps were empty. Madam Deputy Speaker, there is a fuel crisis. It's happening. It's rolling out. And we have got to have a plan if you want to stop panic. There is no plan. Another one, Madam Deputy Speaker, we're in the cattle game. There was a truck from Betts Transport, did a number of runs, ran out to Ebor, up to Dorrigo, then back to Karoona feedlot, which is near Corindai, then to the Gunnedah sale yards. Those B doubles take 1,800 litres of fuel to fill up. 1,800 litres of fuel. They have about 90 head of cattle. Gunnedah sale yards had 6,500 head that day. That means you have about 72 B doubles worth of cattle. And 72 B doubles worth of cattle and fuel is about 130,000 litres. It wasn't there. The fuel just was not there. So this is what happens. The truck goes in and realises it's down on fuel, so because it's not getting to them in bulk amounts, because they can't buy it in bulk amounts, they go to the fuel stations. So guess what happens there? They run the fuel stations out of fuel. And then the people driving up the road trying to get somewhere get to these towns and they're not going anywhere because there is no fuel. And there's no charging facilities either, so forget about that. So what happens is the prime mover with 90 head of cattle has to disarticulate, it's got a little bit of fuel left, and it just goes driving from petrol station to petrol station, which are also empty. And when it does load up, it's going to run that village out of fuel. And in the end, they couldn't find fuel. So there's 90 head of cattle sitting on a truck. This just gives you an example of what is happening. And we've got to understand it and take it seriously. And when we hear, and people are getting so furious out there, they're watching Question Time and they're not seeing people take their problems seriously. And as I said, that was a big operator. They're starting to move groceries. And they said, it's going to run out. If we don't have fuel, we are not able to run the groceries to the supermarkets. There has got to be a plan. And the plan may entail saying to people in the cities, sorry, there's only so much fuel you can use, so we can have fuel in the countries, because if the trucks stop moving, your food stops moving. And if your food stops moving, you'll only need a couple of supermarkets to run out. And then you really will have panic. Then you'll have it big time. So get in front of the situation and deal with it. It is not in One Nation's interest, in the Labor's interest, in the Liberals' interest, in the Nationals' interest, for anybody, for this nation not to realise what is happening right now. I've written to the Treasurer, just so people know, I've actually written him a handwritten note, because I always hope, I know how it works, those ones get read. And what a lot of these independent operators are, they're not bad people. They just said, we've got to get a chance to sit down with the Treasurer. I mean, they're not saying, oh, we hate the Labor Party. They're saying, give us a chance to sit down with the Treasurer and the ACCC, because the information you're getting is not the reality we're living. And a lot of the big fuel suppliers, your BP and the Shell, they're quite happy if some of these independents go under, because they'll just take their market share off them. So this is a lot more complex, and it's rolling out. Every day, Madam Speaker, we don't get on top of this. It gets worse and worse and worse. These letters that are coming to my office are getting more and more and more. These are from rational, sane, serious business people. These are not, they're dealing in multi-million-dollar businesses. And we're showing the naivety of this building if we don't start taking these people seriously. And the best way to take them seriously is to say, okay, come on down. We'll have a meeting in the Treasurer's office or the Finance Minister's office, and let's see if we can sort this out, because it's in nobody's interest if the trucks that deliver to the supermarkets stop moving.
Call the member for Chisholm.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. And I think when we look around our communities and we see the optimism of the young people in electorates right across Australia, we can all see that Australia's future is bright because they are just so passionate. Every time I visit a school in my community of Chisholm, it fills me with even more conviction to act on that optimism in this House, delivering a better future for them and the generations that will come after them. I want to really thank St Justin's Parish Primary School in Wheelers Hill for having me along to talk about our democracy and system of government, and what a knowledgeable group of young people they were. The variety of questions from their cohort was so impressive, from ideas to support Australia becoming a clean energy superpower to questions about the quirks of being a federal parliamentarian. Their enthusiasm for the future and the eagerness to understand how we arrived at our democracy as we know it now made for an incredibly uplifting and very fulfilling experience. I also want to take this moment to congratulate Anahera and Oliver on their election as school captains. Their passion and commitment to their peers was so obvious and truly inspiring. Our future is bright, Deputy Speaker, with quite a few students there, I'm sure, set to join us as future members. I've had a very busy few weeks in the time that I've been able to spend in Chisholm between Parliament sittings, and I want to wish everyone in Chisholm a very happy Holi. It was great fun to join so many friends, including Victorian Minister for Tourism, Sport and Major Events and local MP Steve Demopoulos, and families for another amazing Rangbas Festival of Colours at Brickmakers Park. The colour run is always a highlight and full of energy, and it is a really important celebration that is all about the triumph of light over darkness, of good over evil. And every year I reflect on how important that message is for all of us to bear in mind. I'd like to thank Yogesh, Minu and other organisers from Bhakti Tarang for coordinating this event. And I acknowledge the support offered by the City of Monash, Hum Tum Task Force and Dr RMB to the event too. I'd also like to take this opportunity to pay special tribute to Arvind Kumar Shrivastava, who passed away last December. So whilst it was an incredible event, a true celebration of light over darkness, it did feel different without his presence. I want to thank him for his contribution to making our community so strong, and send my love and support to his family, who continue his legacy. Without the contribution of these individuals, community organisations and to local governments, these outstanding cultural events would not take place, and we would all be so much poorer for it. May this year bring happiness, positivity and new beginnings into the lives of those who celebrate Holi. Deputy Speaker, the Albanese Labor government is powering Australia's future, with over 250,000 of households, small businesses and community organisations having installed a bill-busting battery under the Albanese government's Cheaper Home Batteries program, with around half of those installing new or upgraded solar systems at the same time. What this means in Chisholm is that 1,655 families and local businesses have embraced energy upgrades that save them money and make their homes and businesses much more energy efficient. These results show our community is getting on with it, taking up batteries and backing a cleaner energy future that is made from Australia's abundant renewable resources. My constituents are embracing this. They don't want slogans, they want bills that are easier to pay and a cleaner, better future through a plan that delivers and is accessible for them. And that's exactly what this program is. And I was really pleased to have Minister Chris Bowen visit my electorate a little while ago when we announced this particular program. And I know from speaking to so many people in my community, they were so excited to see this program get underway. And so I'm thrilled to see the uptake in my community, and I'm sure that will continue to be the case. Because like me, my community really does care about both the environment and making sure that we can do what we can to ease cost of living pressures on households every day. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. I call the member for Fadden.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, we couldn't really close the Federation Chamber this week without talking about the big topic of the week, and that is fuel supply and fuel prices. And, you know, there is absolutely no doubt that this is hurting some sectors more than others. We know that our farmers, we know our fishers, we know our friends in the bush are really struggling. But in my local area, it's even small businesses that are really starting to struggle. Now, I've been contacted this week by a mobile welder and fabricator who's been stood down from work. Now, it's not because there's not enough work or enough demand. The reason for him being stood down is about the uncertainty of diesel supply needed to run the generator that's used for the mobile fabrication work. So we know that many of our tradespeople rely on diesel-powered equipment to keep working each day. And what happens is that when the fuel supply becomes uncertain, the prices go up, the supply just disappears, the businesses can't plan, they can't deliver, and ultimately workers lose work. And this is having real consequences in our local community. Now, overnight we've seen that diesel has hit about $2.55 a litre in the local area. Now that's shot up from about $1.55 when I last filled up the tank before I came down to Canberra. Now, $1 per litre is the price spike on diesel just in the local area. And this is really causing major dramas, particularly for our transport businesses. Now, I was contacted by Danielle from the local area in response to a Facebook post I put out there this morning. Now, she welcomes enforcement action, but truthfully, she says this: that is of no help to small businesses who have to pass on the fuel increases as a levy to their customers, whether that be business to business or consumers. I'm in the transport industry and it's not able to be absorbed. Now, what this means, of course, is that the cost of everything goes up, because when fuel prices go up, the cost of transport, the cost of generators, the refrigeration, all of it goes up. Now, we're already in difficulty with inflation. The RBA is not happy with where we're sitting. Excuse me. So they had already forecast that inflation was probably going to get to about 4.2%. But this fuel crisis is now putting even more pressure on that inflationary number. And we saw just in the last couple of days reports that Deputy Governor Andrew Hauser has said that he expected inflation will smash through that 4.2% and could maybe stop short of 5%. Now, those numbers are way outside the RBA's comfort zone, way outside. And the RBA in those circumstances has only got one lever that they can pull, and that's to lift interest rates. And what that means is higher mortgage repayments for households. It means higher rents because the cost of what that house is to hold will go up. Now, each and every mortgage holder that has an average mortgage in Australia is paying about $23,000 a year more now, Deputy Speaker, than they were when the Coalition was in government. And every incremental increase to rates makes it just that much harder to keep the roof over your head. Now, had we been in a circumstance, Deputy Speaker, where the Treasurer had us well prepared for these kind of events, where inflation was under control, where inflation had actually turned the corner, where the Reserve Bank was satisfied with where inflation was at, we might be better prepared to deal with these world shocks. But at the moment, we are badly exposed to what is going on in world events because we are adding these events on top of already high inflation data. We are shockingly exposed, and this is just one example of the mismanagement of the economy by this Treasurer. And another thing that I'll point to that many Australians don't know, we are about to tick over $1 trillion in national debt, which means we are servicing interest of $72 million a day. This type of management must end.
Call the member for more.
Deputy Speaker, in times of uncertainty, when households are feeling the pressure of rising costs and when the pace of events around the world can sometimes feel unsettling, it is often the arts that quietly help carry us through. They give us stories that help us make sense of the world. They create moments of joy and connection. And importantly, they provide opportunities for people to learn, create and experience culture without needing deep pockets. In my electorate of Moore, we are fortunate to have a vibrant cultural community supported by outstanding local institutions. One of the most important of these is our local library network. Across Moore, we have 4 fantastic libraries: Duncraig, Joondalup, Whitfords and Woodvale. And every day they provide something incredibly valuable: free access to knowledge, culture and creativity. And I can report, Deputy Speaker, that this morning I signed up for the City of Joondalup Library Services online. And it only took a few minutes. And I immediately unlocked access to a remarkable range of digital resources. Libraries today are not what people imagine them to be. The old stereotype of quiet buildings full of dusty shelves has long since passed. Modern libraries are dynamic, digital and deeply connected to the communities they serve. Through the City of Joondalup Library System, residents can access an extraordinary range of online resources entirely free of charge. Platforms like Libby allow people to borrow ebooks and audiobooks from home. Canopy provides access to thousands of films and documentaries. Hoopla offers movies, music, comics and television shows. And Ancestry.com allows residents to explore their family history and discover the stories that shaped the generations before them. At a time when subscription services seem to multiply every year and monthly bills quickly add up, these resources offer genuine value for families. And importantly, the library ensures that everyone can access them. If the technology feels daunting, residents can simply book an appointment with the library's friendly team who will sit them down and show them how to download an ebook, stream a film, or start exploring their family history online. Libraries across Australia are evolving this way. In fact, earlier today, I was fortunate enough to visit the National Library of Australia, just a short walk from this chamber. And the visit was a powerful reminder of just how much libraries have evolved. While the National Library continues its vital role preserving Australia's written history, it now also provides vast digital collections, photographs, oral history, archives and research materials for all Australians. As a member of the Joint Standing Committee on the Parliamentary Library, I see firsthand how important modern information services are in ensuring Australians can access knowledge in new and evolving ways. But the arts are not only found in libraries. Earlier this month, I had the pleasure of attending the opening of the Joondalup Festival at the Joondalup Contemporary Art Gallery. The opening exhibition featured rare photographs of David Bowie by Christine de Grancy and was a powerful reminder of the way art captures moments in time and tells stories that resonate across generations. The Joondalup Festival itself has become one of the cultural highlights of the Perth's northern suburbs. And importantly, it includes a wide range of free community events and outdoor performances, ensuring families can come together to experience the arts without having to worry about cost. Recently, I also had the opportunity to host Susan Templeman, the Special Envoy for the Arts in Joondalup, bringing together a cross-section of our local arts community. What stood out was the extraordinary talent, passion and commitment that exists in our community, but also the very real challenges the sector is facing. There was also a strong and clear message about the importance of fit-for-purpose cultural infrastructure as our region continues to grow. Joondalup is increasingly recognised as Western Australia's second CBD, and if we are serious about that vision, we must also invest in the cultural infrastructure that brings a city to life. As I said in my inaugural speech, culture is infrastructure too, because in times like these, the arts do more than entertain. They bring people together, they strengthen communities, and they help remind us that even in uncertain times, creativity and culture help carry us forward.
I call the member for Parkes.
Deputy Speaker, earlier this year in this place, we witnessed an act of Parliament that showed how far we have strayed from the democratic process. The terrorist attack at Bondi Beach by Islamic extremists was turned into a circus targeting the 1 million Australians who lawfully own and use firearms. With no time to consider the revised gun bill, it was brought before the Parliament to push through by the Albanese Labor government with the support of the Greens through the Senate. It was an echo of what occurred on Christmas Eve at the hands of the New South Wales Labor government, who pushed through gun law reform that is already hugely having a detrimental effect on regional Australia. Deputy Speaker, phone call after phone call, letter after letter, email after email. I'm getting angry residents throughout the Parkes electorate telling me that people do not want this gun law reform. They pointed out that our country already has some of the toughest regulations in the world. They argued that the problem was not farmers controlling feral animals, it was not sporting shooters developing their skills, was not those who use firearms as part of their job. This terrible act of terrorism happened in one of our largest cities, at our best-known beach, at the hands of Islamic extremist terrorists. My electorate, the seat of Parkes, is a regional electorate. There are vast tracts of land managed by very few people. Pest animals flourish if the land is not managed. They can destroy land, livelihoods, ecosystems and species. The federal and New South Wales government's new laws will diminish farmers' ability to keep the number of guns that they have for specific purposes. Sporting shooters have voiced their serious concerns about the impact on their sport and the lack of consultation. Just a few weeks ago at Broken Hill, I met with law-abiding gun owners at the Broken Hill Sporting Complex and heard firsthand the frustrations these people are facing with the new laws. Deputy Speaker, I've also spoken to a number of small businesses throughout the Parkes electorate who specialise in supplying firearms, ammunition and accessories, and repeating to me one simple message. These reforms could mean the end of their business. David and Nancy Thwaite own and operate Hunt, Camp and Fish, a small business in Walgett, and have shared that their business has been basically at a virtual standstill, with a huge fall in revenue since the changes were made. And I quote, "One of the biggest grain-growing regions in Australia faces huge crop losses and massive cost increases in utilising professional pest eradicators instead of free recreational hunters." And in Dubbo, Marty and Nikki Burke, owners and operators of GunPro, their family business that's been trading for more than 16 years. They've shared the devastating news that earlier this year they've cancelled orders for $2 million worth of goods because these rushed, misguided gun laws. About 40% of their stock can no longer be sold, and firearm sales are down 90%. This business is also a supplier to government agencies, including New South Wales Police and National Parks and Wildlife. In Moree, small business owners Sam and Shani Tomlinson from Two Rivers Gun and Ammo shared that their business dreams have now become an absolute nightmare. Their staff members have been forced to find work elsewhere, and this couple are left to contemplate their future. And again, I quote, "None of these changes stop or will ever stop what happened, but this government will never admit its own fault. It will only ever pass them on to people like me." In Broken Hill, the story is the same. Jerry from Silver City Guns and Ammo told me that now he must look seriously at the future of his generational family-owned business. Deputy Speaker, the Labor Greens coalition forced this gun buyback program onto all Australians without the details on how it will work. They simply committed $1 billion and quoted that the states and territories would be required to match that funding. Since then, we've heard that the Queensland, Tasmania and Northern Territory will not participate, leaving more questions than answers. The now Albanese government must commit to a fair market value compensation for all firearms, redundant ammunition and accessories, and a financial support package for impacted small businesses and sporting shooter clubs affected by the legislative changes. Deputy Speaker, this is what a lack of consultation can lead to. Farmers concerned about their future, sporting shooters left in confusion, and small business owners whose dreams have now turned into nightmares.
I call the member for Kingsford Smith.
Thanks, Speaker. Last month I joined the Cyprus community of New South Wales for the Australia-Cyprus Achievement Awards, honouring achievement, service and shared heritage between Australia and Cyprus. It was a celebration of the significant contribution that the Cypriot community has made to our nation. And many of them arrived after the Second World War. They were young, they didn't speak English, they found our food boring and tasteless. They had little but the clothes on their back, but they worked hard. They maintained their faith through the Greek Orthodox Church and community. They had families and they made a life of it in Australia. And hasn't our nation benefited because of that? And indeed our community. Many settled in Marrickville, in Kingsgrove, Bankstown, Kingsford and of course Maroubra. And they brought with them the institutions that sustain community life: afternoon schools, theatre groups, dance troupes, sporting clubs, bakeries and churches, and as well the wonderful Cypriot club that was in St Peter's. There were places of belonging, identity and continuity, and they helped shape the multicultural character of the suburbs that we know today. The Australia-Cyprus Achievement Awards reflected that legacy. Among the major honorees were Nephitos Stavru, recognised for a lifetime of service to commerce, culture, faith and philanthropy. And then there's my good mate, Con Theocharides and his family, who were honoured for their exceptional humanitarian leadership through their charity, A Touch of Kindness, that feed the homeless and those displaced each week in Sydney, one of Australia's largest charitable support missions. In 2026, the Australian Cyprus Achievement Hall of Fame awardee was Professor Richard Green, recognising his outstanding contribution to classical and Cypriot archaeology and his pivotal role in advancing Australia-Cyprus scholarly relations. And in the Australia-Cyprus Achievement Award for Youth, it was presented to Jacqueline Tavolos for recognising her work in encouraging civil participation among young Cypriot Australians. The Cyprus community of New South Wales forms a living bridge between Cyprus and Australia, and it stands as a reminder that Australia is enriched by every culture that now calls our wonderful country home. I congratulate all the award recipients and commend the community for its outstanding contribution to Australian society. Speaker, I'd also like to acknowledge and congratulate the Chinese Australian Services Society, commonly known as CAS, on its 45th anniversary. CAS is an organisation that has played a vital role in supporting migrants, particularly from China, strengthening communities and contributing to Australia's multicultural success story. It was founded to meet the needs of those who arrived in Australia seeking opportunity and a sense of belonging. For many who left their homelands behind, organisations like CAS provide not only practical assistance, but also the reassurance that they're not alone as they build new lives in this country. I want to also acknowledge the broader contribution of Australia's Chinese community, who have had a presence and made a contribution in Australia for more than 170 years. Chinese Australians have helped shape our national story through their work in business, science, education, the arts, community and service to public life. For 45 years, CAS has delivered services that reach deep into that community. Their programs support more than 8,500 families each week. These services span settlement support, health programs, childcare, ageing and home care assistance, disability services, vocational training and language classes. Each of these programs has helped Australians participate fully in social and economic life, but the contribution of CAS extends beyond service delivery. It fosters that wonderful sense of community that sustains people through every stage of their migrational journey. And by nurturing cultural traditions and supporting intergenerational connection, CAS strengthens not only Australian Chinese community, but the broader Australian story. It's also reflected in the organisation's longevity. And I recently attended a CAS event to celebrate Lunar New Year. John Chunjier is a festival that we also celebrate with them at Kensington, and it's a wonderful opportunity to bring our community together. I want to thank Professor Stephen Lee, the chairperson of CAS, and all the wonderful staff and volunteers of the organisation who've contributed to building CAS into the wonderful organisation that it is 45 years later. I thank CAS for this milestone anniversary. I commend them on their work and to empower and support communities, particularly the Chinese, across our nation.
Thank you, Assistant Minister for Immigration, Foreign Affairs and Trade. The question is that the motion be agreed to. All of those opinions say aye. Aye. I think the ayes have it. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The Federation Chamber stands adjourned until 10:30 a.m. on Monday, the 23rd of March 2026.